full crew?
Yeah, that's just
Yeah.
a simple vote.
Okay. All right, here's the minutes of that.
Last right behind them.
I attached them to the agenda.
All right, oh, there they are, okay. Well, why don't I announce that we're gonna start?
Okay.
What do we got here? July 24th meeting of the planning board is about to begin,
We're being televised.
and we're being televised. All right, so we're gonna check on some minutes right now for past meetings. See anything that stands out? Oh, there's Nance.
I'm here. I got word from Mike that he was gonna be about 15 minutes late.
Okay.
You want a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 26th?
Sure. You ready, Henry?
Yeah, I'm ready.
We get a motion, can we get a second?
Second.
There we go, all in favor? Aye. That's out of the way. So one there, or two there?
Just one. Just one.
Wow, we're caught up. Look at that, huh?
I'm not going down.
On the
that
ball.
path.
Jeez. Where did I put my, oh, there they are. I'm throwing it out with the,
Going out with the trash.
throwing it out with the
Mom's got
trash.
pinch sciatic.
Throw that out there.
Can't walk.
All right.
You can
Work
go
session.
ahead with
First thing we got coming up, the work session, Economic Development Committee, Route 40 Study Committee. You guys ready, Dawn, or?
I believe we are. I believe we are. So this evening, Sam is going to Sam will make a presentation to you as well as John Wellman when he shows up.
Okay. You want to start in on your presentation, or you want to wait for? Rather,
If we can wait for John, that would be great.
okay.
What, do you want to do the A&R, the withdrawal?
Yep, we can do a withdrawal on the A&R. We got
That's done.
a letter here. Please accept my withdrawal for my A&R for the Concord Road / Regina property. What's his name?
Timothy Russell?
Timothy Russell. We need to vote on this for the withdrawal. We get a motion to what? Motion to
To
Accept
accept the withdrawal
Accept the
without
withdrawal.
prejudice, right?
without prejudice.
Without prejudice.
All right, we'll take that. Can we have a second on Henry's motion? Have
Second.
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's done. All right. That out of the way. Okay. That's done. We can't do 9 Acton Road yet, right? Or can we?
No,
No.
Not ready on them yet.
no, you gotta wait till
7:30.
7 or 7:30 or whatever.
7:30.
That's not a public
Oh, that's
hearing,
not
though.
a
That's an
public hearing.
applicability.
Oh, you're right.
278, 282 has to wait till 7:30.
Right.
Everything else you can start.
Do we get anybody here from Acton Road yet?
Katie's here.
The team was told not to show up till 8, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I assumed we do Route 40 first.
Yep. All right.
Do we have enough to start?
Looks like we're waiting.
Does
Are you
does
comfortable?
Pam have anything to?
Yeah. So, yeah, Sam was comfortable going forward in John's absence, and he'll catch up
Okay.
when he comes. So,
All right.
um,
Yeah, whatever you want to do. You want to jump in there, jump in.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. My name is Sam Chase. I'm a member of the Economic Development Commission, and I, this evening, am speaking for the Commission. Essentially, we have a letter that we would like to read into the record. I understand that you may have seen advance copies of that letter, but I would like to present to you now the letter.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Put this in with the file afterwards. Did everybody get a copy of this on your phones or whatever?
Yeah, it
Yes.
came in earlier
Came
today,
in?
yeah.
Did you
I
get a
have a
chance?
printed one,
You have hard
Put
copies
this
in
in the
front
file
of you.
right there.
and I have it up on the board.
Yeah.
Everybody get a chance to look at them, that's,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I
Fine.
kind of scrolled through it a little bit late this afternoon.
Maybe it'd be
Okay,
helpful if Sam read it into record if possible.
yeah, okay, you wanna do that, Sam? We can-
That's what I'd like to do. I'd just like to read it into the record, and the letter essentially speaks for itself. A little bit of background, I understand that the planning board solicited input directly from the Economic Development Commission, so with that in mind, we met last week, and we had, I think, a fairly lively discussion among committee members. There were members of the public present at the meeting. There was also a member of the Route 40 Study Committee present at the meeting. And we had a preliminary discussion and decided on a course of action to respond to the request that you folks had for input. We met last night. The chairman had drafted a letter, and we went over that letter, and we made some editorial changes, and that's what the final version of that is what I'll be reading into the record this evening. So, having said that, letter dated July 24th, 2019, to the Town of Chelmsford Planning Board, subject Route 3, Route 40 rezoning process. The Economic Development Committee is a town manager-appointed body with the goal of balancing quality of life issues with a desirable standard of living for all Chelmsford taxpayers. The committee has been regularly updated on the discussions by the Planning Board and Route 40 Study Committee regarding the possible rezoning of the Route 40 corridor. At our last meeting on July 16th, 2019, as part of our public input, the Chelmsford Town Manager shared the following Route 40 insights with which the EDC, Economic Development Commission, agrees. Point 1. Consideration of the Route 40 corridor rezoning warrants a holistic town-wide view based on multiple variables, including economic development opportunity, desire to increase commercial, industrial, and personal property valuations, future development of the UMass Lowell West Campus, and pending opening of the Westford asphalt plant. These factors should all be part of the calculus. Point 2, any major rezoning should consider the big picture and be strategic, including fiscal and community needs and strategies. Point 3, why the rush for fall town meeting? It is better to do it right than rushed. And point 4, perhaps this effort should be part of the master planning process. Also, at this meeting, a member of the Route 40 committee made herself available to answer questions and help educate the EDC concerning the Route 40 Study Committee's mission statement, process, and methodology employed when making their recommendation. Further, the town's Director of Community Development stated that the town has applied for a state grant to study the 3 highway interchanges along Route 3, including Groton Road, to determine the future potential of these interchanges based upon local and regional markets. That will provide valuable insight into the future of the Groton Road interchange. In support, the Economic Development Commission paraphrases the 2010 Chelmsford Master Plan, parenthesis, Land Use and Zoning Recommendation 61, end of parenthesis, addressing the land use and zoning conflicts that exist along the Route 40 corridor between Route 3 and the Westford town line. The master plan recommends that the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee should be reconvened to work with the neighborhood and the planning board to resolve these conflicts in a way that takes residents' concerns into account and is beneficial to the community overall. The use of transitional zoning should be explored as a means of reducing existing and future conflicts between residential and commercial industrial uses. Further, the master plan suggests this area will be transformed into a host for, quote, major new commercial and mixed-use development, helping to minimize traffic congestion and maximize growth in the community's commercial tax base, end quote. The Economic Development Commission asserts that the Route 40 Study Committee's proposed zoning recommendation for the north side and their reluctance to recommend zoning changes on the south side of Route 40 reflects a missed opportunity that, according to the master plan, does not best serve the interest of the broader Chelmsford community. Additionally, the process to date has been limited in scope, resulting in a recommendation that is not comprehensive and coordinated from a town-wide strategic planning and economic development perspective. The Economic Development Commission appeals to the Planning Board to exercise responsible zoning practices and not rush to judgment. The Economic Development Commission believes it is essential to include all Chelmsford taxpayers in the decision process, recognize the recommendation of the 2010 Master Plan, consider the professional testimony from the town manager, endorse a zoning bylaw supported by financial and market data, and consider the potential contrasting development of UMass Lowell West Campus, as well as potential opportunities for redevelopment at the interchange of Route 3 and Route 40. In closing, the Economic Development Commission requests that the Planning Board delay rezoning consideration of the Route 40 corridor for the fall town meeting, with a target date of spring 2020. The Economic Development Commission advocates a collaborative approach as noted in the 2010 Master Plan. Using the Route 40 study recommendation as a baseline, the working group should be structured with one representative from each of the following: one from the Board of Selectmen, one from the Planning Board, one from the Route 40 Study Committee, one from the Master Plan Update Committee, one from one Precinct 3 Town Meeting member, and one from the Economic Development Committee, and an at-large town meeting member. Their goal will be to examine numerical and categorical data, solicit input from the broader community, and balance zoning initiatives in preparation for a planning board recommendation at spring 2020 town meeting. Respectfully submitted, Economic Development Committee, Don Van Dyne, Chair, Tom Boucher, Sam Chase, Mike Kowalik, Peter McAllister, Laura Smith, and John Wellman. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So with that, do we have any questions? And we'll go around the table if anybody wants any questions to ask of the Economic Development team.
Glenn, can I ask questions since I'm an alternate?
Sure,
I
absolutely.
have a couple, Sam, and one for you, Pam. One of the things you're saying is we're rushing to do this. And I recall last year, this was thrown on our laps, and the town wanted us to rush it to the last fall town meeting. We pumped the brakes, made a committee, they did their due diligence, and this is what they found. So I don't think we're rushing for the fall town meeting. I think we're just hitting the mark for what we were tasked for on that. And on Pam, on the committee, were you ever notified for this grant application?
No, we weren't, and we had public interviews every meeting for 9 months.
Right.
Agencies could have come at any time and joined us and joined in our discussions.
Yeah, I just think, I don't want to insult your committee because I think you're doing a great job, but, you know, your first point with the consideration, I think the committee covered all the things you wrote down on that paragraph. You know, so I just think, I'm still on track for going with the committee. That's just my point.
Okay.
Okay?
Nan, you want to, questions to throw out?
Can I do comments?
Do whatever you want, that's fine.
All right. So, I really appreciate the effort that you've put into this and the fact that you have made formal comments. What bothers me is that having been on the committee, one, the committee was made up of the representation that you are recommending that a new committee be made up of. Therefore, that representation has already done a comprehensive job. 2, we didn't go into this analysis for 10 months looking at emotions. We had representation from all sorts of inputs, including the town manager, including community development, including housing. And what we adamantly heard was the need for affordable housing, particularly focused on seniors. And that's what we developed as a recommendation going forward. It was not oh, let's pull this out of our hats. It was not, we're going to forget about the economic advantages of putting a shopping center there. We absolutely looked at all of those options in terms of what could be put in that area, what fit in that area, what was in the best interest of the town, and what we absolutely heard from the various inputs that we received was that senior housing and senior living is absolutely critical to our go forward for the next 15, 20 years. That's what this plan, this recommendation that was put forward by the committee recommends. You know, it wouldn't bother me that you don't see that from the Economic Development Committee, except that we had representation from the Economic Development Committee on that board.
I just heard there wasn't any Economic Development Committee representation.
Don Van Dyne was on this.
A member of your committee just said that there wasn't any. Was there or wasn't there?
Don Van Dyne was a member of this.
Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
good.
So the fact that the chair of the Economic Development Committee was a member of the Route 40 Analysis Committee, and you come up with a letter like this that says we didn't do our jobs, doesn't make me happy.
I don't think the letter says you didn't do your job.
Yeah, since you actually recognized me, Nan, I do appreciate your comments. However, the letter is not meant to be offensive at all. I do believe it does point out the process that was taking place with, and I certainly was part of that process. And as you know, that in the minutes reflect, I do not agree with
I understand.
what the committee came up with. So therefore, from my perspective, and I believe from the EDC's as well, is that what is omitted in this study was any data support to say, other than David Hedison came in and said we need senior housing. We have now another issue with UMass Lowell, which I've brought it up with the planning board before. What happens if UMass Lowell goes to senior housing?
Happens if it does.
There may not be a market, therefore, for Route 40. Likewise, you have senior housing in the shadow of an asphalt plant.
May I say something, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
And again, to the members' comments here, this letter is not meant to be accusatory in any way. Certainly, we recognize the effort that the Route 40 Study Committee put in. I read your report twice, which included an attachment of meeting minutes, so I am well aware of the effort that was put in, and I certainly appreciate it as a Chelmsford resident and taxpayer. I think the charge of the Economic Development Committee is to address these issues, and hopefully the input that you as a planning board was seeking from us were comments relative to the economic viability of your proposal. So you had a proposal that was made by the town a year ago, which may or may not have flown. It may have been complete, incomplete, who knows, okay? But the charge that I think we were given was to take a look at this from highest and best use and an economic development perspective, and I think that's what we did. So the fact that I think we're saying that the issue needs a further look in terms of the parameters that are described in our letter is just that. And within the parameters, as the chairman of our committee has just said, from a data standpoint and other economic impacts that might be considered outside just the scope of that particular neighborhood. And I think that's what we're driving at. So I'll say it again, the letter is not meant to be accusatory in any way. It's meant to offer a broader perspective in terms of the potential economic impact over the long term for the community as a whole. And I think we believe that any zoning effort ought to take that into consideration, and that ought to be, if not the primary consideration, at least very high on the priority list.
And Henry got something to throw at you.
You know, we had a Route 40 study that did a lot of due diligence. They did a lot of work. They've had a lot of meetings. I have a real problem with not acting on what they've suggested for us. I can also look at, this is a two-prong approach. We're trying to put something together that's going to pass town meeting. There's a very good chance that if we take and put the whole thing on the, I mean, this subject's going to have to be handled on town meeting floor. No matter what we say, no matter what we do, it's going to town meeting. And that's where it's going to be solved. Now, being a town meeting rep for quite a few years, like you, Sam, you know, it may stand a better chance going in at two different points.
Timing is everything.
I know. But, you know, I really have a problem with asking people to put time, sweat, effort into it, and then throwing it away.
I don't think we're advocating that we throw it away. I think we're proposing a delay until spring. So we're taking it's what, 5 months, 6 months.
And we use the report as a baseline.
Correct.
So we're not
So
So
suggesting
nobody's suggesting that anything be thrown away.
You know, and I know everybody's gonna agree to disagree on this. We're not gonna find a golden parachute that everybody's gonna be dancing and holding hands with this thing. It's gonna be a fight in town meeting no matter what we do. And North has traditionally up there had a pretty good vocal outcome. I honestly think it should be held as a two-prong approach, and if you want to take and bring something for the other side, you bring it to the town meeting, which everybody has a right to do. Any citizens can put it to petition together, which will most likely will happen over here, and it either lives or dies on town meeting floor, and that's, you know, we live in a democracy. That's how it works. That's my opinion on it.
Mike?
No comment.
No comment from Mike. I'm going to echo on kind of what Henry's saying as far as committees go. I've seen way too many times that a committee will come in and do all the work that these people did, and then it just gets tossed out. It's been out there for almost a year now, and all of a sudden at the 11th hour, it got to go for another 6 months. I don't get it why in a year's time it couldn't have been all resolved by now. Yes?
Hey, Mr. Chair, just a reflection. One of the first things that the Route 40 committee did was establish the goals for the solution that for the recommendation they were coming up with. And right up front, we discussed if one of our goals was to recommend the highest and best use. In other words, the most financially beneficial use for the town. And we had a long discussion about it, and it actually carried over a couple meetings. What we're seeing here is a difference of goals between the EDC and the Route 40 committee, because the goals that we came up with were not the highest and best use for tax purposes. It was to identify the most pertinent need of usage for the town that fit into that area. And that's what this recommendation, the final recommendation, did, is it identified what that committee, after all of its research, determined was a needed use that was appropriate for the community that we were talking about. And we recognized that it was absolutely not the highest and best financial purpose. If that's what we were looking for, we probably would be putting gas stations in there. And that's not what we felt was either useful to the town because of the adjacency of that type of use at both of the adjacent exits, and useful for the neighborhood because it is surrounded by residential areas on two of its sides.
Okay. Would you have any questions you'd like to ask of the EDC?
Mike?
Mike?
Well, at this point, seeing as I haven't heard their presentation, I've only read their letter, I think it'd be a little unfair.
Their presentation was their letter.
Was their letter? Well, in that case. No, I have some sympathy with what's in here, but I have to agree with Nancy. The scope of the Route 40 committee and its objectives were rather broader than this. And I think they did a pretty good job there. Perfect? No, I'm sure it's not perfect. But I think it did a reasonable job of satisfying a number of competing issues. And I certainly don't think that we should consider delaying this past the September meeting. Now, it may pass, it may not pass. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities here. If it doesn't, then we go back and figure out where we miscalculated. But I think at this point, my inclination is to have this push forward.
I kind of agree 100% with what Henry was saying a little while ago. Our job here is just to say, yeah, go to town meeting. We'll stand behind it. The committee did a good job. Or, no, the committee didn't do a good job. We don't stand behind it. That's our job here. We're not voting it in. Town meeting votes it in. We're just saying to them, yeah, we think what they brought to us was a correct package to go with that area of zoning.
And actually, our recommendation doesn't mean anything.
It really doesn't, because they pick it apart anyhow.
No, they can still go.
Right.
Yeah.
They can still go. Anybody can take and bring something in front of the town meeting. They get the correct signatures, they get the correct stuff behind it. You can do what you want.
Yeah, I do have a question for the planning board.
Yeah.
And that is, in reflection of the Route 40 Study Committee's recommendation, is the planning board comfortable with leaving the south side untouched and leaving it RC?
For this town meeting, yes.
But this,
For this town meeting, yes.
I think so.
What does that mean for this town meeting?
If it comes back at something different in the future, once the north side is built out, which obviously that's gonna probably happen first, then they can look at it and say, well, yeah, maybe
So
you need that over there.
Does that mean another study committee is put together to
No.
look at that?
Not necessarily.
not necessarily.
It just, somebody would have to go back
A
to,
citizen can take and make a petition. Let's say somebody on the south side said, I'd like to have it changed. They could
There's a petition in front of us.
There is one.
There's two petitions.
Excuse me, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Mr. Chairman, you don't need me anymore, right?
no, you can sit down if you want.
Okay, thank you. Just before I do that, just, again, I just want to thank the committee and remind you and anybody who may be watching that you folks asked for the Economic Development Commission's input.
Yep.
And we have done that, and
I appreciate all
this
the
is
help
not,
you've
from our perspective, this is not an adversarial proceeding, okay? So I just want to leave you with that thought. Thank you very
given.
much.
Thank you very much for all your
Sam.
work.
So what I was trying to say is anybody has the right to take and bring something in front of town meeting. You get the signatures, you can
Yeah,
do whatever you want.
that
with the planning
petition,
board.
that petition is
But
just a
they come-
petition.
They come to the
Just a-
planning board, they can ask for our input on a different you can handle this in a two-stage thing. I think you might
Come
stand
to
a
us
better
anyway.
chance of solving something if you do, but what I think and what actually happens is usually two different things.
Are you
I-
concerned, are you concerned at all that someone maybe move forward with redevelopment of the south side and RC?
That
That's-
doesn't bother me at all.
That's-
Anybody's got a right
The
to
plan
do-
that was shown to us,
Yeah.
that showed all the duplexes, that's what we want.
So that's what you want.
I think that's,
An option.
that's,
All right, so, I mean,
probably
now,
because
understanding-
now that's a buffer area between the rest of the residential.
Right,
Kind of like on Turnpike Road, there's a buffer area.
right,
You know what I mean? That's was kind of the thought behind that.
yeah.
You know, these guys thought of it. I thought it was kind of a good idea. Just leave it like that. But that's my idea on it anyhow.
Nam, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion on the south side would keep it RC and expand that RC along the remaining properties along Route 3, such that there's a larger area there for development for duplexes. But that's my personal opinion, and that's not the committee's opinion. So, as a planning board member, I have that opinion. As a Route 40 member, I'm absolutely in support of what they came forward with today, is leave it alone, and certainly for now, leave it alone. Having experience taking articles before town meeting, less is better. And in that respect, I would much rather take the north side to town meeting by itself. And if we deem that changes should be made to the south side, do it at a later time.
Right. If the planning board is going to accept the north side as drafted, is that true? Or
Well,
we haven't
we
voted
need
on
to
it
yet,
discuss
but-
at some point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not just gonna,
Evan, a quick question for you. If the board decides to leave the south side alone, it doesn't have to go to town meeting,
Yes,
or it does?
What?
It's RC already.
There'd be no
No
action on the
changes.
south
no
side.
action on
Okay.
south
There's
side.
no action on south
Okay,
side.
so we wouldn't have to vote on the south side at all
No,
It's not part of the proposal.
no.
if we're gonna leave it alone. Okay.
No. As a planning board member and the member that tends to draft things, I personally don't think that we should take the article as drafted by the Route 40 committee 100% intact to town meeting. I think there should be some edits from a planning board standpoint. But as the recommendation of Route 40, it's absolutely appropriate.
Okay. Well, my thought on it
And there's
is,
a few things in there that need to be addressed before,
Yep.
from our standpoint, before we would take it
my
forward.
thought on it is, we'll run it through the board and get a vote on it, whether or not to approve it to town meeting for the north side, and leave it open for discussion so we can change and alter that by means of a,
Yeah,
what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, we still gotta take some
We- we
public
s-
input too, a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Once the public input comes in,
Yeah.
then we can tweak it a little bit after that fact.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get it behind us to get it, to get a motion going to either approve it or deny, not even approve it, deny, what is it? It's,
You wanna say
Recommend,
No.
recommend.
But you want to
Recommend on-
schedule the public hearing. That's
Yeah.
what you-
yeah.
recommend, and then we can go towards the scheduled
Public hearing.
public hearing and then move on. So with that being said, if anybody has anything that they'd like to throw out in the form of possibly a motion.
Since you have some
Yeah.
time this evening, there was at your request, the Route 40 committee did meet and review the technical memo, and they made suggested edits, which was sent out to
Yeah.
everybody.
Right.
I would suggest that you, since you have some time, that you look at that revised edition. And that should be, you should figure out whether that's the new working document.
what, you had definite some ideas, Nan, how you wanted to change a couple things too.
Yeah, there's at least one edit that was put into it that I can't
everybody have a
support,
copy?
and I would not support the article with it in there. While I believe that it's an appropriate use for the Route 40 area,
All right,
I don't believe it belongs in this article on the north side of the,
one second, Nan.
Yeah.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we go through number by number
that's fine.
and see if we want to change what we want to change, and then we'll go forward after that. That makes sense?
It's in the
Makes sense.
So with that, you got one of these, Henry?
With the ED edits?
Yeah, maybe I took yours.
You probably took mine.
All right. Okay, items for further consideration. Is that what we, nope.
So there are three articles, three town meeting articles included here. The first one revises the zoning of the properties directly along Route 40 to make them IA instead of RC.
Okay, everybody like that?
North side.
All right,
North
that's
side,
good.
yeah, this is the north side.
only
Yep.
north side.
And if you can, Nan, while you're going through this, try to go through all the north side ones first.
They're all north side.
north side.
That's right.
There's
okay.
nothing here for
Never
south
mind,
side.
Never mind. I was
Okay.
thinking outside the box here.
Okay. Article 2 creates a new overlay definition. So this is a whole new section for the zoning bylaws that addresses the construction and the requirements for a continuing care community overlay district. This is drafted predominantly such that it could be placed anywhere, not just Route 40. But because this is a recommendation of the Route 40 committee, it got tweaked so that it is Route 40 specific.
Okay,
So before we take it as a bylaw to town meeting for inclusion in our bylaws, as a planning board member, I would recommend that we make sure it's clean enough that it could be applied to other areas, not just to the Route 40 area, if we find another area that would be appropriate for a continuing care community.
okay. What's everybody think on that? We'll start with Mike.
Okay, which Mike?
You pick one, I don't care.
On the north side discussion, I think the biggest thing is, in this overlay, there's pieces like Nancy mentioned, was for the north side that we had, that we wanted to see the restaurant, retail pieces, multifamily.
Yeah.
And then there was height. And way in the back, where there's no neighbors, we were giving them 5 stories. That 5-story site may not fit on the south side of Chelmsford somewhere.
Right,
So those things are things we have to
okay.
modify.
So we have to be careful of those.
Yeah.
Because there's
That's-
special pieces that are in
yeah.
here that are specifically for the Route 40.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we were to take and apply this anywhere else in town, we have to go through this work session again. You just can't lay this.
You have to evaluate it in detail whether it's appropriate for that section.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah,
just
that's
a-
right.
just a-
Before you would do the article that would change the zoning for that area to apply the overlay.
Yeah.
So that's the third article we have here,
Nope,
is
we're still-
applying this to Route 40.
All right,
Okay.
so what were you gonna say,
I
Mike?
just wanted to make it clear that, we need to be careful talking about this overlay district right now. The only place in town it would apply to is the north side of Route
That's
40.
right.
And this
Yeah.
is future-looking. It might be useful later on in another area, maybe with tweaks, maybe without.
Yeah.
But that's not the intent
Right,
of what we're taking up to town meeting on this fall.
okay.
But right now, the expectation is the only place this would be applied is Route 40.
Right. Myself personally, I think I'd like to see this stay as just for Route 40. And my reasoning behind that is to make another overlay district really isn't, it's a lot of work. I'm not saying it's not a lot of work, because it is good, you put a ton of work into it. But
Yeah.
to make it unique to the next area deserves that amount of work.
Okay, let's get through it and then have that discussion,
Okay,
okay?
all right. Tim, you want to comment on this?
I kind of feel the same way as you. It's why are we doing it for the rest of the town? I think we should just concentrate on what it's for, but I guess Nan has another reason for that, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Don?
Yeah, sure. It's something that overlay can be used in the future, but the applicability right now, I believe, is primarily for the Route 40 area.
Okay.
But definitely something that we can consider going forward.
Okay. So why don't we leave that one alone?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
One's good.
all right.
Next?
All right, so 195, 148 addresses the establishment of an overlay, of this overlay, what it's all about, what the purpose of it is, and what the objectives are of a CCCOD. So the same way that we have this type of a section in the CEIOD and the VCOD, this is the intent of the overlay. So as an overlay, it is an optional use. The underlying use is still available for anybody to use as an IA district. In addition to that, for this area, the CEIOD would also be applicable for the whole area. So it gives developers a lot of options, a lot of flexibility. This is just a very specific use that requires a large area to implement, and we don't have very many of them.
Right.
So let me see if I have somewhere here an example. I'll pass it around while we're talking. All right, I stuck it someplace. Let me find it. Of a development that comes to mind that is actually this type of a development. Maybe it's still in my briefcase. Hang on. So that's some extracts from a website of a continuing care development that is up in Maine that I'm familiar with. And it's just an example of what they're like.
I know it well.
So that particular one addresses independent living in two family cottages, and then a transition into apartment living that has a restaurant and hairdresser and banking facilities and, all the amenities that seniors need. And then it also contains assisted living and nursing care,
Okay.
and all the amenities that go with it.
So is
So-
everybody here good with 195, 148?
I am.
All right.
Mike, good? Henry, good?
Yep.
Tim, good?
Yeah.
Don, good? Okay, that one's good.
Okay, 149 is just the establishment statement, and it needs to have the date of when it's applied,
Okay.
if it's approved. 150 is,
We're all good with that one, right?
yeah, it's not very many things you
Yep.
can complain
All right,
about.
we're just checking them off as we
Yep.
go.
150 is the use regulations.
That's just the interesting part.
This is the interesting part. So this is where additional uses get permitted that would not be permitted by the overlay, that would be not be permitted in the underlying district. There are things in this list that are indeed applicable in an IA district that are permitted, and they were included in the list in order to make this overlay available to use on top of a different type of underlying zoning. Okay, so facilitated living facilities, for instance, could be done in a IA without using this overlay. But if you were applying this overlay on top of a CB, for instance, you would have to provide the availability to do it within the overlay. So that's why this is written the way it is. And when I said it's written so it can be applied, in other places. That's
Yep.
the kind of things that are in here that do that.
Okay.
Okay, C?
Everybody good with 150?
She's still going
Oh,
over
you're
some
still
hard-
going
I was still going on it.
Oh, I thought you were skipping.
Yeah, so
with
B, yeah, exactly. B, 150B is the things that are permitted by right. C are the things that are permitted by special permit. And we, planning board, are the special permit authorizing body.
Are you okay with the changes that were made at the last meeting right there under 195, 150B, letter D? Taking out the parking structures to support the uses?
Why did you do that?
That was a discussion that came up with the team based off of the letter we received and discussion with Evan.
Okay, so why
that
did you do that?
So that's the question, are you okay with that?
I'd rather you don't.
Right, because they took out the word clinics, because I think
Yeah,
clinics is already
that's
in the
fine.
underlying
Yeah.
zoning.
What I'm not comfortable with is adding F. And I can't support it with F in there. It adds in
Down the back,
unlimited multifamily dwellings.
No, I agree.
And I absolutely cannot support that in the CCCOD. I can support it in the north side of Route 40, but I cannot support it in this overlay, as part of this overlay. And the reason is, it totally defeats the purpose of what the overlay is all about. The overlay is there to create a senior living center, to structure a senior living center. And if you're adding unlimited multifamily apartments in there, it blows it.
Okay.
Okay, so if we want to put up general apartments on the north side of Route 40, I believe we should find another way to structure it in, but
Okay.
not here.
Do you think apartments should be on the north side?
I don't have a problem with apartments being on the north side of Route 40. I think that we should allow multifamily housing under the CEIOD for all industrial areas. Because looking at the map of where we have housing, multifamily housing, in industrial districts, virtually all of our industrial areas already have multifamily housing. Therefore, I see no reason to restrict them, new ones from being put there. So I think it should be done a different way, but I can support it being there.
Yeah, let me point out also with an IA being, with this CEIOD being applicable, we've had some practice putting multifamily into such areas. So you don't need this overlay.
This overlay is not the place to do
Yeah,
it.
well, you don't need this anyway
No.
to do it, not in the north side.
Oh,
of
you
Route
do,
40.
because
Well,
you can do multifamily in the Route 40 overlay that falls back on the CEIOD, but you cannot do multifamily in any other industrial area using only the CEIOD.
Cynthia, I might have an idea.
Yeah,
I mean, we're trying to promote the 55 plus, correct?
that's right.
Why don't we give them a higher density if they do a 55 plus, or they go to a much lower density if they want to do the appliance, do 10 units per acre. That will definitely change some thoughts.
Doesn't it?
So the reason that provision is in there is that I think during that work session with the Route 40 committee, they realized that under existing conditions, the vision of a CCCOD is just that. It's a vision.
Yeah.
The overlay is designed to be a master plan development. And until the 51 acres are under one ownership, it's just a vision.
It's just a
Right.
vision. I
Vision.
understand.
So my point to the committee was, if we're gonna go through the effort of bringing a rezoning to town meeting, shouldn't it be more than just a vision? Like, allow a real market opportunity? So the notion that someone's gonna build senior housing, gonna acquire enough land to do a master plan senior housing development with accessory services and recreation and clubhouses and pools and what have you, that's long off.
Yeah.
And then the notion that they're gonna plant it under the asphalt plant seems far-fetched to me.
I think
If you-
putting density housing on
So I'm
the
just saying, so if the
asphalt
community,
plant
if the
is gonna be
community,
great.
so my point to the committee was, if the community's willing to put senior housing under an asphalt, and it's just a vision,
We had multifamily.
why not allow a real market
Didn't we have
opportunity and allow multifamily to go
Can
there?
can I ask a question on this? What exactly, this being an IA,
Housing is not allowed in an IA,
absolutely not allowed?
Even under the
It's
CI.
only the Bayard that.
even under the
It's only the
COA,
Bayard.
right? So that's all my
Okay,
point. is
all
that
right.
If the planning board wants to bring the north side to town meeting, the Route 40 committee has already acknowledged that it's a long-term zoning proposal, which is good. Zoning is long-term.
Right.
But it may never happen.
May never happen.
And so if you want something to happen there, adding multifamily as another housing option may actually get housing built there. That's the only point.
And my only point is to do it
If
under
you
the
simply want to
COA.
restrict it to senior housing, just understand that that may never get built there.
May never get built, right.
So what happens if senior housing never gets built and it's IA? Are we now with contractor yards?
Presumably, yeah.
Presumably.
So this is part of the reason, I don't want to go back to the EDC
They could put
letter.
a hotel in.
But this is part of the reason that I think the
They can
EDC
put a
was looking
medical
for a
center
broader
in.
perspective.
Right.
A lot of things you can put
Is
in.
it zoning for the sake of zoning doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to get built there. It's just as likely to get built with underlying IA, which it could be a hotel or it could be a contractor yard.
It's what it is.
And there's a lot, and there's a lot
Right.
of things in between. You went from
Yeah.
two extremes. You guys went to the worst, the
Well, I
contractor
think-
yard, and then we're
right,
saying,
and I
okay,
think-
a hotel.
and I-
So, but if
right.
you list on our report, you see the report, all of the items that
Agreed.
you currently do under IA,
My point,
you're
I think what the
ignoring.
EDC was trying to say is, why not be a bit more strategic? Not just zone for the sake of zoning, because it's an exercise that we need to do and want to do, but actually zone like 129, where you're very strategic about it, where you want something to get built for a very specific purpose, neighborhood-wise and town-wise. This overlay's fine. It expands underlying IA, and it allows for a new overlay. My guess is, based upon existing conditions out there, the underlying IA is what will get built. And it will likely be traditional IA, contractor yards, things of that nature.
The two biggest landowners out there, I don't think have any interest in building apartments.
Well, one of them has been on record that he'd be willing to sell.
They'd be
I mean,
willing to
again,
sell.
it's
Yeah,
all,
if somebody wanted to
without,
give them three
the
times
the
what
point
the
is,
property-
without significant land assembly, the CCCOD is just a vision. And that vision requires significant property to implement that vision, which doesn't exist right now. And the committee's acknowledged with those two property owners that you just mentioned, Henry, is not likely to occur anytime in the near future. So as long as everyone acknowledges that this is simply black words on white paper, a long-term vision, it's got nothing to do with short-term zoning implementation. Because you don't need the overlay in order to do IA underlying. If you simply want to, expand the IA to the street, you can do that without the overlay.
Right.
So if we're saying that the zoning, we're okay with the zoning because we're thinking long-term here, we don't know what long-term is, especially since we don't have it supported by any data. Why are we moving forward then? I mean, we have no support to say senior housing is appropriate right now, here and now.
Well, the part that's getting me is last year at this almost exact same time, we were getting drilled down our throats to have it approved in one meeting for basically the same thing
Without data. And we
without
still don't have data.
anything,
Yeah,
and the town was on board with that.
absolutely, and we don't have any data.
So we went for a whole year. In my mind, that should be more than enough time for everybody to get their data together and everybody to dot their i's and cross their t's.
Nobody got any data together, though, not even the committee. The committee didn't put any supported data together to say this is appropriate, other than Dave Hedison came in. And what do we do about UMass Lowell? Now the market may not be able to absorb all that.
Now the
senior housing.
economic development wants
More time to look and
more time to
collect
look
data.
at, but
to
what did you
collect
do for last year?
data. It wasn't our role.
I think they were respecting the process.
Yeah.
Everybody keeps saying, what about UMass Lowell? Well, that's privately owned. So we're focusing on Route 40.
That takes a
Well,
change.
that's privately owned.
Well, it's planning board business because it's going
Right, but
to
it's-
require rezoning.
Right, but we're focused on
Pam.
Route 40.
Pam wants to speak on the Route, for the Route 40 people.
Wanted to expand on Evan's explanation about currently there's land in the front of Route 40 that is developable, and right now it's residential, and we've expanded IA to increase opportunity. The land in the back, whether it is zoned to what we see as a future vision or economic development sees as future vision, like Evan says, is going to be long time before it happens because it's under private ownership. So whether we go with EDC's suggestion or ours, it's not going to happen because it's under private ownership and they're not looking to sell. So we are looking at the future vision and what would make the most sense of the land. But what we've done is we've allowed development to take place right up to the street so that there can be changes now, because that is the only land available to develop at this time. So we did look at that. We did talk about CC. I'm sure that many of these people listened to my presentation, and we did look at the south side, and we talked extensively about the south side, and our recommendation was to not change the zoning. So a lot of people seem to indicate that we're ignoring or not changing it, so we didn't do our job. We did our job, we looked at it, we chose not to change it. And again, on the north side, as Evan says, no matter whether it's our plan or EDC's, it's long-term. That land is not available to develop at this point.
So F is in there, and we had this discussion at the Route 40 committee, was to acknowledge that maybe that's a not so long-term option. It's not senior housing.
So,
Again, if you don't put the multifamily in there, the only housing you're allowing is senior housing. And that doesn't, just because you zone it, doesn't mean a developer wants to build senior housing
Oh,
there.
I agree with that.
So that's
100%.
the point.
Right. I agree with that. Go ahead, Nan.
yeah, so I would suggest that we take the multifamily housing out of here unless we put a 55 and over restriction on it.
All right, which one do you want?
and-
You want it out of the 55 and over?
I don't really care. I'm okay with the
Why don't
55 and
we pick
over.
ones so we can move forward
But
with it?
but I also suggest that outside of the Route 40 discussion,
Mm-hmm.
that the planning board put forward an article for town meeting to add multifamily housing to the CCIOD in the IA districts.
Okay, that's gonna be something completely
That's a
separate.
completely separate.
It's real easy to do.
Okay.
It's delete a clause,
All right,
4
Yep.
words,
okay. Why don't we,
but it's separate.
why don't we get through this first, then we'll worry about that? And
So-
we
so
can
add-
do that later on in,
Add age
Session or
restricted
whatever you
in
wanna have.
under
Can I ask you a
multifamily,
question?
55 and over.
Yeah.
Just put it back in. the big
Evan,
above.
I have a question, and we're talking here, we're comparing,
Yeah.
far out future
Yeah, okay.
things and
Ah.
strategy with possibly closer in things. Do we have any information that we have a developer or developers that are seriously interested right now in developing a multifamily like this on the north side?
I don't know if it's that specific. We know that there is a real-world developer who's attempting to engage with
Okay.
the planning board and Route 40 and the community and wants to invest in the Route 40 area.
And they are expressing interest in...
I'm not aware that they've ever expressed a specific plan. The plan that was presented a year ago,
Yeah.
that is off the table.
Okay.
There's new partners or different partners.
Well, as I
involved.
recall, that included the south
So
side, too.
again, I think the
That's
Route
out
40
of our-
committee's process, rightfully so, said it was not developer-driven.
Right.
So now here you are asking the elephant
I'm
in the
just
room.
I'm wondering if there's an
That's part-
elephant in the room that I
that's part
don't
of
see.
The problem is that this is a exercising, for the sake of an exercise. The
Mm-hmm.
Route 40 committee process stated that they weren't going to do real-world.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no data. They didn't engage with a proponent. That was their methodology. I think what EDC is suggesting is, you have a real-world entity who's buying property, owns property, and wants to develop, and yet what you're potentially proposing may have no interest.
Well,
So what's the point?
you're right, it may not, but I'm a little hesitant to be doing planning based on particular
And just so
proponents.
that's the rub here, right? As long
Yeah.
as you understand, that just because you rezone it doesn't mean that anything actually happens.
Right, oh, that's
No
understood.
housing, no economic development, no retail, no
Well,
nothing.
look at all the things that didn't happen on 129.
The 129 is.
We had other
is being-
things that happened, but not...
That's
Not
more
what
real
we-
world, much more real world.
We're looking for.
So again, if
So-
if the planning board is committed to forwarding the Route 40's recommendation What's being suggested here, and I'm not sure Route 40 opposes it, is to include F, multifamily. Now we're talking about whether the multifamily should be age-restricted or not.
Okay. Why don't we, with that thought in mind, multifamily housing or 55 and over?
Keep B, eliminate the edit that was done in B, and eliminate F. So B
Eliminate B and
addresses,
F.
B addresses age-restricted multifamily, and F added an unrestricted multifamily. So eliminate the unrestricted and go back to including the age-restricted in B.
Everybody good with that?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pam?
Nancy, I just want clarity. So I believe the committee wants to allow any type of housing on the north side, but the overlay has a CCOD component, which isn't only over 55. We're not reducing that ability, right?
So the discussion on the table is to take the unlimited, non-over 55 housing out of the CCOD and address it separately under a planning board article under the CEIOD.
Which still
would-
could apply.
Which would put it back.
I think the
yes,
planning board
which would
tabled
still
that,
apply.
Nan,
Did they, I don't think we tabled that. I think we said we would look at it
separately, is what I
separately,
heard. Yeah.
not as part of this conversation.
I think what the chair is asking the board is whether within this article that was going to fall town meeting, whether to allow within the article itself, CCCOD, to allow multifamily, and if so, age-restricted or not age-restricted.
Age-restricted.
Okay. Mike, age restricted or not age restricted?
Age restricted.
Mike, age restricted. Henry?
Age restricted, I'd like to noodle on this over the weekend, though, if we come back to this
Yeah.
next meeting.
Yeah.
If somebody comes up with some brainstorm.
Is the committee supporting F? Do they want multifamily housing?
They want multifamily. What I'm saying is, we should support that separately under a different article, not in the CCCOD.
I didn't put it together yet. It won't happen in September.
Right, so.
I can give that to you in about 5
Well,
minutes.
I'm confused, and I think, like, this is why I think we make things difficult when we're trying to make it so that we can use it everywhere, when we're just talking about there right now.
I'm just trying to get through this paragraph here.
But it's hard to get through that paragraph when,
The
Well,
non-age
we're like
restricted does
oh,
not
look,
fit
there's a
within the
squirrel.
scope of the overlay. The overlay is about a senior community.
One second.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we in public hearing?
We're not in public hearing, but she's a liaison for the,
Oh, she's on.
It's a work session.
Work session. He's on the committee.
yeah, she's
on the committee as well, so, yep.
Yeah.
Virginia Timmons, 28 Levitt Lane. Nancy, the question that's come to mind is, if you are able to change the CEIOD to accommodate multifamily housing, any kind of multifamily housing, are we still limiting? Because I think somewhere else in that article, or in the way it was conceived, was that the developer would have to pick one overlay and only one. So,
But if they were using CEIOD with multifamily, they would not use this at all. That's my point. They can already use CEIOD. But CEIOD today does not allow multifamily and IA.
and if they choose to use COD, then they would never be able to use the CEIOD, right, in the same.
They use one or the other.
Right.
That's right.
So by putting it in the CEIOD, it's just a consideration.
It's just a consideration of
You may be
which-
taking away that ability to do any kind of multifamily if the choice is the CCCOD.
Why don't we let, as Henry said, let's pass and
Okay.
let the board think about
The
it.
only thing that I would noodle on is if you want to take and do the 55 and older, I threw out a crazy number before, but I'm just saying, give them give them an advantage to do it. You know, maybe you give them 25 units to the acre, something. That's not the number I'm saying we stick with, but I'm just saying, think about it, we come back on it
Yeah,
the next
okay.
meeting and work on it with that.
So are you 55 and over or multifamily?
I'd have to think about it more.
Dawn?
Well, certainly I'm leaning towards multifamily.
Okay.
But I do have a question. Are we considering putting age restricted on there because we believe that maybe the CCCOD may not be successful? I mean, why would we put age restricted on that? I don't understand. Why is that necessary? Put age restricted on multifamily.
What would you?
Well, how I would look at it is same thing as we've done with the affordable housing through the entire town. If you want people to build it, you gotta give them a reason to build it. You know, and the 20 units per acre when they could have only allowed 10 units per acre, let's say, or whatever, was always the incentive. They got an extra 10 units on that acre, that's incentive to build. There's an economic reason to take and build at that point. And that's how we got our 10%. Now, if you want to do it 55 and older, and that's what the driven thing is, you got to give them a reason to build it. You just have to give them a reason to build it.
That's right.
If it's not economically feasible, nobody's ever going to build it. End of discussion. That's just things are driven by money.
Okay.
Now, you know, we never zone for money, but to get to the end product, that's what you might have to do. And I honestly think there's, you know, I do my best thinking about 1 o'clock in the morning when I wake up, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of the day. But
Can you give us all a call?
yeah, I'll give you all a call. Not a problem. But
Do we need to just think about this one until the next meeting?
I think
Do we
it
have
would.
time to do that? I mean, can we?
Can I just, is there a way we could do multifamily 55 and over 20 units per acre, and then any other multifamily units 15 per acre? Just leave it at
That's
that.
kind of what I threw out.
Right, just-
Something in that area that
Just
would
do that.
drive more of it, but that would only be a Route 40 thing.
Right.
And you'd get you get over 55 in regular.
I just wanted to reiterate, we weren't endorsing only 55 and over. The continuing care.
I know, but we're
Yeah. And can I ask, can Katie clarify something that she's trying to explain to me and I can't articulate as well as her? Can she speak for just a minute?
It's not open to public. If we let
Yeah.
an engineer jump in, we're gonna have to open it to public, so we're not ready for that yet.
And I can have her try to explain it to me again.
Yeah.
All
right.
right, so that paragraph there
So
is on
think
hold.
about it. That's on
right?
hold.
All right.
Review.
The next paragraph.
All right, special provisions for all implementations of CCCOD. Parking garages shall not be counted towards floor area. You guys took out parking garages in another place. Is this still relevant?
The section above, under 195, 150B, the committee decided to delete parking garages as a by right use because under the IA use table that requires a special permit.
So they come in for us for a special permit, so.
So that should get moved to C, not deleted? C is things that require special permit?
It's within the underlying IA, requires a special permit.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so it
190,
doesn't-
195, 150A says that the existing use regulation schedule shall be applicable within the underlying zoning districts.
All right. Okay. I think you should put it in C, but that's beside the point. All right, let's see, B, new construction of restaurants, personal care services, basically things that are accessory to a senior community. Dimensional standards of the underlying zones apply, unless there's something in here that specifically exempts them. And there are a few things that exempt them.
Okay, so we good with that? 151?
Okay?
I'm good with it.
Good one?
Yeah, I'm good
Yeah,
with
you're
it.
good with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
152, these are
Yep.
another set of special provisions, and they are very specific to the Route 40 area.
Okay,
Okay, so 151, no matter where you wanted to apply this overlay, those would still apply. But 152, the things that are currently in here would only apply to Route 40. So building heights, the same way that we allowed higher buildings directly on 129, this allows for higher buildings in the rear portion of the north side. It also requires that the area directly along Route 40 only has low buildings, 3 stories, 35 feet in height, compatible with residential uses. So it creates that buffer from the adjoining the adjacent residential area.
so with that being said, in the high-rise construction industry, you may not have anybody, we're going back to the developers. If you put the 5-story thing in there, nobody is gonna build a 5-story building, because once you go over a 4-story building, your prices go through the roof, construction-wise.
And a lot of people will just stop at the.
They'll stop at the
They'll
4th
stop.
floor.
Most people probably will, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the sense of going to the 5 floors if nobody's gonna ever use it?
Would somebody do it for, say, a hotel?
Yeah, if the Hilton were to come in or something like that, or, you know, one of the big, I would imagine they do them all the time.
But it would be but what you're saying is it would be uneconomical to do for instance,
multifamily-
an assisted living center.
Yeah, because
Okay.
once you get past that 4th floor, everything
Yeah.
changes.
What about a medical building?
Anything.
Anything.
Once you're higher than 4 floors, it just,
I think having it in there ain't gonna hurt anything.
Yeah, it's not.
yeah, if they wanted to,
They wanna do it.
right.
If they want
yeah.
to do it.
I'm just saying, they're never gonna do it.
Yeah.
That's all I was saying.
All right.
Yeah, I just don't
But
think.
you
it's
can leave it,
worth
you can leave it
It's
in
not
there.
likely.
Yeah.
You can leave it in there.
But we
It doesn't hurt.
basically said, look, back there, because of, the granite
Yep.
facilities back
Right.
there,
Yeah.
you can't really see over Route 2 into that area from Scotty Hollow, and the front buildings would buffer it from Route 40, that it would be okay to go much higher in the back.
Okay, so that
Okay.
Article 150, where are we on? 152?
153.
52 is good
152.
with everybody, correct?
That's fine by me.
All right, 53.
153 is applicability to the overlay district. It basically says all provisions, all the specifics in here take precedence over the rest of the zoning bylaws, so there's some overrides. And the relationship with the zoning provisions. Evan, this came straight out of some of the other overlays.
Yep.
It just ties it all together back to the bylaws.
Okay, everybody good with that one?
I'm good with that.
So the only thing we have in here then that is controversial that we need to
Controversial
work
is-
out
Yeah.
is whether or not multifamilies
Right.
need to be
So why don't we,
age limited or
why don't we
or
take
not.
10 minutes and work that out, and then we can get this
Yeah.
taken care of,
Glenn,
and
can we
we
get-
can schedule a public hearing.
Now-
Can we get EDC's opinion on whether to leave multifamily in or out? I'd like to know what their opinion is.
You got
we have
two
anyone
members
that
there.
wants
Well,
to
we haven't
speak on
really
it?
discussed it. I mean, I would say leave multifamily in.
Yeah, that would be my suspicion.
I am personally
Yeah.
endorsing leaving the multifamily in the overlay because that's part of what the whole intent of the overlay was.
Okay,
So I'm not comfortable taking it out. And I'd love to hear from anyone from EDC or anyone else from the committee what their opinion was as well.
all right, so you wanted to put the multifamily back in, that was correct?
I
Ma'am?
do not want unlimited multifamily in this overlay. I want to do it in the CEIOD instead. I do want to apply it to that area, but I do not want to do it in this aging in place bylaw.
Okay.
Because the bylaw, the purpose of the bylaw is to provide a structure for a community that is specific for an aging in place or impaired functionality persons. So I think it belongs in that area.
Right.
I don't believe it belongs in this overlay.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
If you move it from 150 to 152, special provisions implemented in specific areas,
You could do that.
tag it with Route 40. It's a little bit clumsy from a
Yeah.
formation point of view, but it accomplishes what
I
you
like
want.
that.
It accomplishes
I
it.
like that. You go with that, Pam?
Pam?
So, this, if I open, will fall apart because my toddler
Who
dropped
are
it on
you?
the floor.
You gotta state your name.
I'm Emily Antle. I live at 9 Mansur Street. On the Board of Selectmen, I was on the Route 40 Committee. So I was the board representation on the Route 40 Committee until Virginia got voted into the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, as it will be known eventually. So anyway, we put multifamily into this overlay because if you don't have multifamily in there, you can't do it. It's not part of the CEIOD, right?
It's not part of this, today it's not part of the CEIOD.
So unless
That's
unless
right.
you are changing the CEIOD, if you are asking people to pick one or the other overlay, you're not going to get multifamily anywhere. And what I am seeing from, I sent myself an email with all sorts of stuff. I also just went and looked up the cost difference between 3 versus 4 versus 5 story. It's about,
Right.
so, I mean, you know, I like to look things up. So from the 2010 master plan quotes, there were a lot in there that talked, I mean, if you go through the master plan, and I did that as quickly as possible this afternoon after getting the EDC's letter. I can read pretty fast. I'm good with the search engine. I did not do a thorough job because it was 558 pages and I had like an hour. So I did as much as I could, but everything I came across that related to Route 40 or developing, adopting zoning regulations for housing and economic development, adopting a sensible and sustainable land use policy, ensuring that Chelmsford is sustainable, all of that applied to every discussion we had in the Route 40 committee. And so I think that you know, we were thinking about long-term effects. We were thinking about the housing needs. We were thinking about where Chelmsford is going, and it fit with the 2010 master plan as well. And I can give you.
Well, I think we just solved the problem.
We just solved the problem.
So you've got multifamily somewhere.
Yeah, we just move it down to the section that talks about Route 40.
All right.
So would all of us be happy with moving that down to 152?
And wording it appropriately. I think you
Moving
may
it
have
in.
to add a word or two to it.
Yeah.
But it
I know what
can't.
you're talking
tweaking
about.
it.
So
the
F
tiered
moves
approach.
to 152.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I'll
I
put
don't
that in
care.
there
That's
for
fine.
consideration.
If we
So
do
Glenn, with the 10 minutes left, the only other items are at the top of the first page
top of
that
the
were
first
discussed,
page.
items for
Okay.
further consideration. These were items that were discussed and brought to the Route 40 committee's attention.
Oh, okay, yeah, I did
that-
go, I went right past them.
Yeah, that they didn't take a definitive stance, but, you know, I think it's.
Freestanding restaurants, how's everybody feel about that?
I don't have a problem with it particularly. It's a matter of how you choose to put the buildings together, you know?
How do you feel about that? We only got 10 minutes before the next meeting.
Based on the work that we did in the Route 40 committee, I'd say not here.
Okay, Mike?
The recommendation of the committee was not to have a freestanding,
Yep.
and I'll stay with that this time.
Okay. Henry?
I could go either way, really doesn't make any difference to me.
Go freestanding.
I'd go with the,
Somebody on your side.
I'd go with the committee's recommendation.
Okay.
Freestanding, yeah.
All right, so we got 3 and 3.
I mean,
I'm
the
fine
other
with,
thing we'd do is we could always tag it to a special permit.
I'm fine with the freestanding myself, so that gives us 4 to 3.
Tag it to a special permit?
You wanna tag it to a
Yeah.
special permit? Why don't we tag it to a special permit, Evan?
Okay, I will draft
All
that
right.
in.
All All right, crap.
Can we tag
Yeah,
it to
craps.
152, specific to 140?
Yeah, and you can put it in 152 specific to Route 40.
Yep, okay.
Fine.
All right, number 2, caps for the 3,000 square feet and the 2,000 square feet for retail. Not to exceed.
So this is just in here, again, kind of going back to Henry's theory that if you want something built, you got to provide incentives.
Why don't we
So-
do the same with that? Throw that on a special permit too.
Yeah, it's even suggested in
Right?
here in the comments.
Put the 2 of them right in a special permit and we got it.
I'll write it up, and then you guys can
Bingo.
deliberate it
Here we
further.
go.
I think
The
we've done
intent,
deliberated.
just the intent on that was not to compete with Vinyl Square.
Right.
I don't think it's gonna.
Yeah, but,
I don't
that,
think
but that's what the, just trying to give you
I
some
understand.
Put a
background.
special
Yeah.
permit, it'll come to us and we
Which
can
is-
look at it case by case.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I just
but
wanted
the-
to say what the intent was
Yep.
behind that.
But the other intent was that this was structured to be a structure for a senior living community
Right.
and not a structure for a BAOD in that area.
Right.
And we felt that these 2 items, while they
Can I take a
They,
make
they, they made sense in terms of accessory uses to the industrial area. They were not a complementary use to the senior community that this
Nancy,
particular,
Can I just make a
represents-
comment? Having several
Yeah.
family members that have been in the places.
yeah,
The restaurant turns into a / meeting area /
yeah,
bunch of other things. If it's underneath a special permit and they come in and say, hey, we want to have bingo for the relatives to do, we want to have.
yeah, yeah,
I
exactly,
think it should, I think it belongs underneath, you'd be surprised.
No, yeah, no.
yeah.
They get bored, they want something to do.
Well, they do, they need,
You know,
they
they
need
need
that
something to do.
space.
Shuffleboard
One
competition.
more from Pam and then we're gonna go for a, for a
So
motion
we
on
don't
this.
have a problem with it being under special permit. We have a problem with it being open-ended. That's a standalone, single-unit, large restaurant, could take over the whole area, and then it takes away from the long-term goal of having accessory businesses that would complement whether it be multifamily living, senior living, the CCOD.
But it would come before us, so.
On the
But how can you,
But you don't have
wouldn't
any
it be appealed
criteria
if
on
you
it.
said, I don't like the size of your building, when you have no
Special-
restrictions or reasons?
Special permit, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, but it can be repealed, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So you want to have some kind of a maximum, so we put in the limits based on what we thought would be appropriate sizes. We would support something that said not to exceed a 10% increase, so they have a little wiggle room. It doesn't have to be exactly 3,000, but we don't want to leave it open-ended, that you can now put an 8,000 square foot building there. That was the purpose of the size.
I mean,
What I'm looking at is, like, you were showing that, the multi-two-family unit all the way around, they want to have a
yeah,
community center,
that's right.
and if it's labeled a community center instead of a restaurant, is that the difference?
That's a difference. That becomes part of those permitted uses that don't have restrictions on them. But what we didn't want was a big box restaurant to go in there, because it's not compatible with utilization of the space for a senior living center.
What's a big box restaurant? I mean, the size-wise.
Outback.
Size-wise.
So like Press Cafe is 4,600 square feet. I think there was somebody would like Press Cafe up there, but that's 4,600 square feet, which is a little bit larger than what I think.
You're not gonna get a real good restaurant. You're gonna get chains to the 3,000
You're
square
gonna get
feet.
yeah.
You're gonna get an Outback, you're gonna get a Chili's, you're gonna get a,
Great,
I think the town has enough of them.
We need a brew pub.
What?
You need a brew pub.
So I'll just leave a placeholder for a maximum not to exceed via special permit.
Okay.
And then
Okay,
you
and
guys
we'll
think
work
about
that
it.
hash around.
Think
All right,
about it
so-
some more.
Why don't we get one of us to,
I'll make a motion that we give Evan the permission to put something together for us, and that we
Then
can look at it next time, and
Yeah.
we've got the general guidelines hammered out.
So just to wrap this one up, your next meeting is August 14th. I'll have a final draft.
Yep.
And you guys can deliberate and finalize it. We'll advertise the public hearing to open on August 28th.
okay,
Open the hearing. Doesn't mean you have to, Board of Selectmen signs the warrant on Monday, September 9th. They need the final language the
sure
Wednesday, the 4th.
I'm sure you'll email this to ahead
I
of
will,
time.
I will,
so that
yep,
we can-
yep. I think you're in good shape,
Okay,
particularly if you spend some time on August 14th at your next meeting.
okay.
Evan, what was the date, the
So we
second
gotta-
date?
28.
The 28th, the hearing will open.
Thank you.
Not suggesting you
We
need to
got a
close the
motion. Did we
hearing.
get a
I just want to
second?
know the date. Just-
I'll second it, but it
Alright,
hasn't
we
been seconded yet.
We got a second and a motion. Can we have a vote? All in favor?
What's the motion, please?
I'd like to know what we're voting on.
To revise per the edits.
Yeah, per the
Revise,
edit.
Move this forward for August 14th and the 28th.
Henry made the motion. Mike made the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Unanimous? All right, that's done. Thank God.
Okay.
What's the will of the board? You want to do the 7:30 public hearing, or do you want to do the next administrative? I think most people in the room are probably here for a certain item.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's everybody here for, you think?
Katie said nobody was, she heard three people there.
I just have to text them and they come in the room.
Maybe for the convenience of the public, do
Yeah.
that first.
Yep, we'll do that first. Come on up.
This is
Make an
Mill Road?
announcement.
Nope.
Which one we doing?
9 Acton Road, Planning
Nine
Board,
Acton, okay.
2019-08, applicability finding, CVOD.
Where do you want me? Because I'm not starting, so.
I'll move.
Great for my kids, we're gonna have cancer at 15.
Want me to move here? You want to switch? Where's your bed?
All right, so this is out of the
I
way.
didn't see it.
That's out of the way.
This
That's
one's
out of the
withdrawn.
9 Acton Road, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, you're right on schedule.
Yeah. Off by 2 minutes.
So just let me know if you want me to give a kind of an intro to the board on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it might make some sense.
Yes,
Yeah, there's
I
some,
think it's probably a good idea once.
yes.
Yeah.
well, most of us aren't all that familiar with the CBOD.
Right,
I
after
mean,
Katie.
We've looked.
You want to do that before Katie or after Katie?
Probably makes sense,
9 Acton Road.
Do it before?
probably makes sense, yeah, for me to open that up. Because there's people in the audience as well.
Okay, yeah. Katie, we're gonna let Evan give an intro real quick on this before you, just so everybody in the audience kind of.
Okay, go ahead then. Okay.
Give us, yeah.
Evan's gonna give a
He's
No,
gonna
just-
give
just some
like an
opening
intro.
Just gonna, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Evan.
You gonna do your own?
Yes.
Want to switch over, Phil?
How do you get through this thing?
No, I feel guilty. Did you look at?
Oh, yeah, this one here for the, I don't understand what they're looking for variances for. The fund.
They haven't.
You ready? It's a big development.
They can't do this. They just can't do it.
Yeah. But they're too close to that.
They did the other day. It was
Understand that.
That's in the village right beside you.
Huh?
And they kicked the kid. They had something else.
Maximum number of dwelling units per building.
Where'd you get this shot?
4 in the CV, 8 in the CD. So they're limited to 4 dwelling units per building in this area.
How much?
4
Units.
units, dwelling units per building.
Yeah. How many?
62 or something, 63. Yeah, they're going to. I mean, this is just a totally.
Phil and I would be sitting next to each other.
All right, so then we're doing back to,
What do you need? I can help you.
Clicker.
I know. I know.
I don't know yet.
Restaurant on Mill Road.
I'm sorry.
No. So at one point we got to a point where, like, you know what, just put it to the next meeting, because until Nancy approves it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he's going around me.
Yes, you are.
And I know what he's, yeah. Yeah.
You're good. Yeah, don't close it. So let us.
64 units.
Want me to start?
Have at it.
All right, so just before the proponent begins their presentation, the chair asked me just to give some, kind of set the stage and some background information. So I just want to speak briefly about what's taken place before tonight. Then I'll just talk briefly about general overview of process for people in the room and in the audience, and then the purpose of tonight's meeting for the board and for the audience. So background on this one is pretty short. While we've been engaged with the property owner with 9 Acton Road off and on for a number of years, most recently they hired a professional broker that specializes in these challenges, these kinds of challenge properties, which led to the proponent this evening meeting with Town Hall. So we've met a couple times over the last, 2, 3, 4 months, very high level, explaining how the overlay works, the process, the planning board engagement. And then on July 11th, the proponent did meet with the Center Village Master Planning Committee at a high level. In accordance with the planning board's kind of direction, this project has not been in front of the Housing Advisory Board. So again, there are some new members here. Center Village Master Planning heard a presentation. They asked some questions. They didn't take any definitive position. I think generally they understood the concept, which leads us to this evening. So at a high level, the process, this is being applied under the Village Center Overlay District. The Village Center Overlay District is tied to the COID only for purposes of process, which speaks to this evening's meeting, the preliminary concept plan meeting where the planning board is tasked with making a determination of applicability or not applicable, or applicability with conditions. If the planning board so chooses to grant a positive applicability, that would invite the proponent to move forward with full design, architectural, civil, landscaping, lighting, stormwater, traffic, things of that nature, in which they would apply to the planning board for a formal public hearing, a butter notification, legal ads, public testimony, peer reviews, things of that nature, technical reviews and so forth. So again, for the purposes of tonight, it's the first step in the process, which is, again, for some of the new board members in the audience, is intended to allow a proponent to come to the chief elected planning board and have a conversation. So obviously, the proponent has a vision, what they believe works for them, the planning board being the experts as to the zoning bylaw and the special permit granting authority. You have what you believe is a good fit for the specific circumstances. And tonight is intended to be a collaborative, high-level engagement, again, whereby a proponent is has an opportunity to present their idea, receive feedback from the planning board, and ultimately the planning board is tasked with, as I said, to make doesn't have to be tonight, but within the next couple meetings, make a determination as to whether the planning board feels as though this project or this concept associated with this kind of project is something that you feel the board can work within the confines of the Center Village Overlay District towards approving some sort of project that's compatible with the concept being proposed this evening. So as I mentioned, an applicability can be conditioned, and as the planning board will likely note, a positive granting of applicability doesn't guarantee any particular outcomes if and when there is a public hearing. So hopefully that provided a kind of a high-level kind of summary for the board members. Some of the newer board members that weren't here for Grist Mill was probably the last and the only project in the Village Center Overlay District. I think there's been some lessons learned with that project and all projects. Purpose of tonight, again, is first meet and greet, high level, for the board to get a kind of a pulse as to whether this is a concept that they want to continue exploring with the proponent.
Okay. You want to state your name and?
Sure. My name is Dennis Morgan, and I'm excited to be here. We are looking to develop 9 Acton Road, and the development team is a single-purpose entity, Howmore, pretty creative. It's the Howland family, basically out of Wilmington. We're represented by partners Wayne Finnegan and Jamie McManus, and the Morgan family from Framingham, Dennis Morgan, and my son Christopher Morgan. Assisting us with all the tough work is the architect Phil Horesco and Katie Enright for engineering. Okay? So this is the parcel, as you can see. I'm relatively new to Chelmsford, but I understand this used to be a bowling alley in the old days. And I think everybody knows the building right now. It's not the most attractive building in town. Just a little look at existing conditions. You see it from different angles. We're trying to point out it's an ugly building. Behind it is Beaver Brook, which is a big piece of our proposal, is to tie in with what the grist mill is doing, what the town has under its master plan to fulfill the bike and pedestrian paths behind it. And we want to participate in that and make it better. We're not just doing it because we're good guys. We think it makes our development a better development. But that's what's behind it. So let me say at the outset here, before we get into a little more detail, we're excited about this because we think the town has done the hard work here. You guys have created the overlay district. It makes it easier for developers to come in and have this conversation, to do something with it. We think, we don't know, we think you would like to see this developed, and as Evan has said, this is the beginning of a conversation that we'd like to have with you about it. We didn't come in here loosey-goosey. We have some concrete ideas of what we want to do, because I think that's the way we get a conversation going. We come in and say, oh, we could do this or we could do that. We don't kick the can down the road a little bit. So we do have a proposal, but we're open-minded as to where we go. So as you can see, the development is right here. This being 9 Acton Road, this being the grist mill. As you can see, this is the shopping plaza down here. This is Bartlett Park, and I believe the library is right here. So it gives you a good feel for how this will really kind of make the center of town a little bit more complete, the center village. Because this is kind of a, I don't know, it doesn't seem part of the downtown right now. And I think by doing this, you will. And with this concentration of residential units between the grist mill and our project, we think will help revitalize the center of town. So this is when you get all the other arrows out of line, it gives you a better view. So Beaver Brook is behind here. Again, this is the grist mill, and this is the future, I think, the development, the Santander development. So someone has expressed this as maybe the second leg of a three-legged stool. These three being the major components of the potential development in downtown in the near future, in the next few years. So when we start our development, we start with the ground floor. All the parking is underneath. So when we get to the elevation, you'll see. So you won't walk up and you won't see a big parking lot. I shouldn't say, there's like 8 spaces on the surface, and we'll go over that in a minute. But it's all underground. This is sort of how the units lay out. The sort of pink color is 1-bedrooms. And so in this, there are 64 units, 58 twos, and 8 ones. So there are 4 floors. There are 2 ones on each floor, totaling 8, and then the rest of the units are 2 bedrooms. So that's the first floor, and you can see we have some visitor parking and some other parking on the first floor. Second floor, third floor, and then on top of the top floor, we have some what I call penthouse units. So it's only in the back. So if you go back here, there are one in here, and at these 2 ends. So they're units you enter on the top floor, the 4th floor, and then you proceed through spirals to the top floor. They'll be very special units. This is sort of a rendering. It's sort of a frontal elevation. It gives you an idea of what the building would look like. This is taken from Bartlett Park, and as we want to do something with Beaver Brook and the pedestrian road, we put a call into the land trust people. We haven't hooked up to them, but we've reached out. You know, we know they have a special type of park in thinking about this, but we would like to assist also, because this is the front yard of this development. So we see this, and we may be wrong. We want to listen to land trust people. Believe me, we don't be presumptuous, but there's a stairway comes down, and you walk across, and it's sort of a connection to the library. I think we can connect Center Village and the library would be a really neat thing, because when we get to our development, there's a way to come from the gristmill side of the brook over through our property and down and over. We still have the gas station there, but we will deal with that with landscape. So this is sort of the site plan that Katie prepared, and you can see it. So we see a line, this sort of being, we actually had the building, last time we were before the overlay district, the other way around. The entrance was on this side, and it actually fit better this way because the building didn't protrude out as much as if we had it flip-flopped. But along here would be a pathway that would go down into the sidewalk, and then you could go over to the park. We would brick our sidewalks and tie into the special lighting that is downtown along our property. Okay, but you can see we're going to really put a hedge here. So this will be a nice walkway. You come down the sidewalk and you cross at the appropriate spot to go over to Bartlett Park if you choose. Well, let me go back. Oh, I goofed. I went too far. How do I do that? I want to talk to one other slide. They never gave me audio-visual presentation lessons. I'm used to the old board.
You need a kid.
Yeah.
So, I think this is, again, it's hard to see, it's not as big, but this here is our building here, and we really want to tie into this bike and pedestrian way that ties into Center Village. And as you can see, it ties to the front of the building, and by putting in the brick sidewalks and the lights, we extend that concept. I think the overlay district is really right here, I believe, and maybe up here a little bit further. So we think we would have a major impact on the area. And that simplifies it with all the lines in it and so forth. Now, it's a bird's eye view, but it shows you how much potential there is here to develop along here and walkways. We've had some geotechnical work done in the back part of the property. I was asked this question at the overlay. They thought it might be a problem, but it's soil that we can compact for trailways and walking ways and things of that nature. We don't see doing that by 2 minutes or concrete or pavers, but compacted soil. So, I think the best is for me to open up to questions. Any questions?
Okay. Anybody got anything they want to ask of this at this point? Or do you want to wait until after Katie's presentation? And
I'd like to see Katie's, because I've got some...
Phil and Katie.
yeah, why don't we get all them through first, and then we'll ask at the end, so we don't have to double up on anything.
Okay. Be glad to take questions after it's all over.
Absolutely.
everyone. Katie Enright with Howard Hudson. Just going to go back to my site plan and talk about some technical aspects of this. Certainly this is in the Center Village Overlay District. Yep. That might be a little bit better now. It doesn't seem to be.
Is it on?
It doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be projecting. Would you rather me walk over and use? No.
Do the best you can do from there.
Okay, I'll try to speak really loud. So my task was to look at a project on this 9 Acton Road, Center Village parcel. Certainly, as Dennis explained, it's on the edge of the Center Village district, and you have only seen one project before this under the Center Village overlay, which is the Grist Mill project. The site right now, there's a large 2-story building on the existing site, and there's a significant amount of pavement. I think if I colored the existing site plan and then showed you this, you'd notice pretty quickly that the open space on the existing parcel is only about 18%, where this proposal is about 43% as far as the amount of green space on this property. As Dennis mentioned, all the parking is underground, and I know that's something that Chelmsford hasn't seen before, but what it does is it really opens up this site to the greenery. It really hides all of that ugly surface parking that you see. It also makes it special to the residents who are going to live there. Some of the other things that were discussed when reviewing the architecture of the building and its context, certainly the brook walk. Currently there's no brook walk on this side. There's been some conversations that need to be had, certainly with the Grist Mill developers. The intention, certainly of the Center Village Committee, was to provide a bridge over the brook and connect the center of town. And there was 2 bridge locations located on the master plan originally, one that goes over from the bike path to the Bartlett Woodlot, and another one that was in this section here prior to the conception of the Grist Mill project. So certainly that would be an added addition, and we're going to be working on whether or not that's something that would be acceptable to the Grist Mill developers, to connect the bike path across the brook, along the brook, and then into this subject property. Something else they've also looked at is this proposed terrace at the back of the property. The proposed terrace does not extend any further than the existing pavement that's there today. We're looking to stay within the existing impervious surfaces, and we're actually significantly less impervious with this site. And certainly as far as drainage is concerned, roof runoff is considered clean, so we're actually reducing the amount of runoff from parking lots pretty significantly on this site. I want to talk a little bit about the center over, the VCOD requirements. Certainly we looked at the setbacks in determining this project, and it's required or allows you to have a 10-foot side and a 10-foot rear setback. And it wants a building to be 15 feet to 50 feet off the frontage. If you look at a lot of the pictures, what the intention was is to create a corridor or create a street frontage that's more walkable. No parking lots in front, no large spaces in front of the buildings. The buildings are right up along the street. And the buildings are required to be multi-story in this district. And so they're talking 2 to 3 stories for the majority of the district here. Certainly we looked at and compared this building to some of the existing buildings in the area. And I know we did this at Grist Mill also, but to put it in context, the flat story on top of this building, not talking about this 5th story that they're speaking about, are just private terraces on the roof, essentially. So they won't have a roof over them. So is 44 feet to the flat portion of the roof. And when you look at those comparisons, the Chelmsford Center, the building we refer to as the hotel from the Central Square side, is 47 feet tall. So essentially that building is pretty much in the same realm as this, and it's right up against the street on the side. Certainly also we have Oddfellows, which is 42 feet tall. So we have 2 buildings that are basically on the edge of the Center Village District and interior of the Center Village District that are similar in height to the proposed building. And certainly Grist Mill was proposed essentially at the same height also. So the Grist Mill being 45 feet from the bike path side to the mean annual roof on that side, and 55 from Cushing. This project will have a similar garage under, but you won't have a view shed from it because it's going to be covered essentially by the topographical differences on the side of the building, so you won't ever have that view shed of looking down Cushing and seeing the 5 stories. The only place you would see the 5th story is really on this end here.
Katie, would we be seeing 5 or would we be seeing 6 at that point? Because you're saying there's penthouses on the back.
The penthouses on the back are just rooftop terraces.
you're not answering my question.
Right,
Would
so
be
you would
seeing
see-
5 or 6 stories?
Five.
You would see five,
Five.
still here. Right.
4 stories and a penthouse just on the back.
And a garage underneath.
And the garage underneath.
But it's below ground, all below ground. It doesn't come above ground.
The only place you would ever be able to see it is if you were standing here and were able to kind of look up and over the edge of the building. You wouldn't have any view sheds from any other direction to see that additional area in the back. Talking a little bit about, just to kind of bring you back a little bit, just to the Center Village master plan and the vision. Certainly we read through that. One of the there's a 10-point action plan, and one of the points in that action plan was to bring residential and promote residential development in the Center Village. The reason for that is to really provide some additional economic development, provide some walkability, basically provide some people that are going to be able to use those businesses and walk to those businesses within the Center Village District without having to be able to get into their car. And provide safe access for them to be able to walk and bike and essentially leave their car in the garage and go have something to eat. And to look at a mixed-use pedestrian-friendly environment. So by providing additional housing in the center, we're adding to that mixed-use environment. Talking about parking, certainly we looked at parking. Our intention is to try to provide 1.7 spaces per unit, which is typical of a multifamily development in the suburbs. Certainly there's 2 studies or manuals that are out that say 1.7 per unit is adequate and 1.38 per unit is adequate when you're looking at a suburban multifamily development. With, again, the majority of those spaces would be under the building, so you would be able to see that. One of the things the Center Village also talked about, and I know people have talked about multifamily housing a lot in Chelmsford, but it actually speaks specific to the Center Village area and accommodating 166 to 250 multifamily units in the Center Village District. And since this was written, we've accomplished 32. So it says there's significant room for additional. The studies and surveys also stated that people want 2-bedroom condos, that most of the people that are looking at these, the majority are 55 plus, and that they're mostly childless households, 1 level with garage unders. That's exactly what the town of Chelmsford stated in the surveys as part of the master plan. This project provides a significant amount of underground parking, significant pedestrian connections, and provides much needed housing in the Center Village Overlay District as stated in your master plan. Certainly I also want to let Phil talk a little bit. He spent a lot of time in Chelmsford with Resco Architects, has a lot of creative understanding about what this building means to him and what it'll mean to Chelmsford, and I think it would be appropriate for him to kind of let you know his creative thought process in designing this building also.
Thank you, Katie. Is this projecting well enough? Perhaps. I don't want, the slides, Dennis did such an excellent job of presenting. Just identifying, I'm Philip Resco, I'm an architect, I'm a landscape architect. And for me, I'll try to speak without the microphone. For me, this is a wonderful opportunity, not just to make a building, but make it part of the landscape. I was excited. Dennis, I've known Dennis, we worked together about 20 years. So he said, "Could you drive up, look at it?" I went out the back and I said, wow, I'm back in Vermont, okay? And it's that Beaver Brook behind there. But we got parking lot, got a kind of very tired old brick building and block building there. And I said, I can do something with the architecture because I can do a lot better than that. That's simple. But to open it up, what we did was just making this U-shaped building. I looked across the street at the Bartlett Park and that beautiful white pine tree. It would be something like I had in my backyard in Vermont. And I'm going like, wow. And it's a lawn. It's like a meadow. It's an open meadow. And I say, instant. So we made this U-shaped piece. And then our terrace off the back has trails that go into this Beaver Brook path and nature thing. And so that it's not just people living there statically. They have a chance to go out and see something and walk around and feel nature. So from my point of view, it was a nice opportunity to create nice homes for people to move into and try to make it an asset to your community. So, I appreciate you listening, and, we'll keep working on this and moving forward as we can. So I remain open, as I do with all my projects. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Let me just end before we open for questions. That I want to let you know our target market is basically empty nesters. Okay. Our market study, as Katie pointed out, says 2 bedrooms. The experience of Gristmill is a demand for 1 bedroom. So we're looking at that a little bit more also as we go down the path here. But the taxes when this building is fully sold will probably bring in a minimum. I'm being very conservative, over $4 million in taxes to the town. So that's a benefit. And we're not looking at school-age children here. We're looking at empty nesters. That's who we're going to market to. People in the Gristmill experience is, giving us some confidence. People in town are buying these, moving out of their homes, and turning over their homes to families again, which is kind of the natural evolution of things. But they're moving downtown. So I think this will be good for downtown. Of course, there'll be some people from, outside of Chelmsford, but it seems that the prime people that will be looking will be empty nesters in Chelmsford and the surrounding towns.
Okay, very good. So, with that being said, does anybody want to start it on the questions and comments?
You want me to start?
You want to start in, Henry? Have at it.
Evan, by right, how much is allowed on this lot?
So within the dimensional table, by right would be 32 units.
So
There's a formula.
is a formula, so
Yep.
we're doubling what's by right.
Yeah, under this proposal, yep.
Katie, your pictures look great, but, from the far side of Bartlett Park, I've mowed that and maintained that for quite a few years before somebody else took over from me. Nobody ever stands on the other side of Bartlett Park and looks all the way over at the building. Everybody's gonna be right on 27. I have a real concern with four stories right on the sidewalk. I love the end of parking. I don't like to see cars around. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I think the 64 is a little bit on the heavy side, especially with 32. And I hate to think that they're coming forward with a big number, hoping that you're just going to come back and say, "Hey, we're not 64 anymore."
We're not doing that.
I'm going by past experiences. That's what I'm trying to.
I
get
understand,
across.
but let me make it clear for the record.
Yeah.
We need around 60 to 64 to do this project. And, if we're talking 32, then we're probably not going to do the project. We'll move on and do something else.
Which
We-
I understand.
And I understand your position. I'm just telling you from our position. There's not huge dollars in this project at the end of the day. It may be an 8% profit margin. It's not huge, believe me. So, that's what we're looking at. We thought we designed it. We try to keep, if you look at most of the building, basically, most of the building is not on the, maybe this strip here is close to the thing, but most of the building is way back. We put it at the back of the lot. We move it up to the front of the lot.
Yeah. All right, Nancy, I'll let you
Yeah,
have
have at it.
fly at it.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Evan, before we make any decisions on this, could you go back and research the zoning district classification for this property? The concern I have is that GIS is showing it as Center Village CV district, and the property card is showing it as CD, General Commercial District. And the regulations, the requirements are different under the VCOD, depending on what the underlying district is. So
we'll
in
check
order
that.
to make any kind of a decision on this, we really need a accurate assessment of the underlying zone.
I will check that. I think the table that you're referring to does not determine units per acre. What you're looking at is maximum number of dwellings per building.
I am, and the maximum number of dwellings per building for multifamily buildings under the VCOD, if it's,
I understand, yep.
if it's CV as an underlying, it's 4 maximum per building, and if it's CD underlying, it's 8 units per building. I'm real concerned that while this is a nice-looking project, it really does not address Table 1 or Table 2 of the VCOD, which are intrinsic requirements that define the VCOD itself. The VCOD was developed as a way to maintain the small-town character of our town center. And what we're seeing here is a 5-story building smack dab in the middle of it. So if I look at the requirements under Table 2 for multifamily dwellings, the maximum, where's this number I'm looking for? Okay, I don't know where that sheet went. We're looking at 35 feet maximum, and 3 stories, and the submittal is for 5 stories. So I'm just not seeing where the concept was planned based on the requirements of the VCOD that requires compliance with those 2 tables.
So, Nan, if I just may, because I know that there's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack here.
So 195, 130B, for this particular project is what the board needs to focus on. 195, 130B. Again, while this is not COID, the Village
This
Center
is not
overlay
COID.
was designed very similar. And B, the provision B is that provision that allows the planning board, where it wants to work with a proponent on what it believes is a good project or potentially a good project, B allows for that flexibility. B is what the planning board used to permit grist mill. So the dimensional tables are intended for small lots, small projects. Grist mill and this are not small lots. These are bigger lots in the center village. So that's why the provision B is in there, to allow the planning board to have this conversation. If this provision wasn't in there, then, Nan, your point about the zoning bylaw has a box and you're not in the box.
Yeah.
Grist mill never would have happened without provision B. And this project won't happen without provision B.
So then the question in front of the planning board, in addition to what's the underlying zone,
We confirmed it's CV.
it is CV.
Yep.
So it is Center Village.
Yep.
So Center Village, along the streets, the major streets, requires that the first floor is commercial. It has a primary building height of 2 floors minimum at 22 feet and 3 floors maximum at 35. So what we're looking at here as a planning board in terms of evaluating, is this proposal providing extra value to the town to stretch the plan for this area to this extent?
Mike?
So I just have a couple of questions based off of what I saw on the plans. I think it's a nice-looking building. I like the idea of it. I think not knowing the town, you mentioned that, too familiar with that? That's a very tough corner. Very fast.
real
In fact, where they've raised they have speed bumps built there because that's a very tough corner. So looking at, I think the building's a nice-looking building. I just think it's too large. And I think it's too large, and you're right on top of that residential neighborhood, Katie, right next door. That single-family home, I think it's 19 Acton.
It's a two,
I think it's a 2.
It's a two-story, but you're right on top of it.
It's a one-family?
So if you look at that, if you were looking at this plan, I would put the ramp on the left side, give them more of a buffer zone, and downsize this project. One question I had was the number of parking. Katie mentioned majority of the parking is under the building. How many spots are under the building?
93.
And, okay, and for 1.7 is 108, right? And then,
Right, that's what I say, we're working towards
You're
the
in between.
1.7. We're at 1.5 right
and your visitor parking's out front?
Yeah, yes, we have 8 spaces out front right now.
8 spaces. If this goes through, it would be nice to incorporate, maybe that driveway gets incorporated through that, so you have
But
one cut
we're
coming
working
in.
down below to see if we can make it a bit bigger, make some tandem spaces,
Yeah.
and get the number up. One of the reasons, if I may go back to your previous
Yeah.
comment, one of the reasons we put the building is we didn't want to have the driveway on the side next to the residential area. We thought it'd be better to have it next to the gas station, and we would landscape this.
Okay.
And it kind of made the building work a little bit better. We understand the corner, yeah, but there's still a good sight line, and definitely have to be a stop sign as you come up our property, make sure before you enter that fray, you know?
Yeah, I just think it's like I said, nice looking building. I think public safety wise, I think it's just a big building for that corner. And looking at your B here, application for, I don't think this applies for that for 195, 130 at this location. This is a big building for that location.
How many acres are here?
1.3.
We're putting 60 units. We have 20,
And we're not
Yeah,
talking,
right.
excuse me, we're not talking about, you're talking about 55 and over, but there's not restricted on 55 and over. So there's no requirements there. And I didn't hear anything about affordability at all.
So this
Where the
is-
rest of the town we're talking
So
about
this is
affordability.
where the board, as Henry said a couple meetings ago, should embrace its power and negotiate it or guide or provide advice.
If
The-
you're
the-
close, though.
So,
close, but-
so again, I know there are some new members here. I've always encouraged or stressed the board not to look at units per acre. It's an arbitrary number. And what I mean by that is, what if the board were to say, rather than 58 two-bedrooms, which are 1,100 square feet each, we'd like you to reduce the number of two-bedrooms and increase the number of one-bedrooms. Well, by doing that, the size of the building gets smaller. So 64 units is arbitrary. What if they were all one-bedrooms? What if they were all studios?
But we shouldn't be designing the project for them, right?
If you, that's not true. That's not true. If the board wants to embrace the strategy and spirit of the overlay, where the town is trying to get projects to come to the table,
If you're close.
no, that's where the conversation takes place, right? So for some members, it may be the building's too big, and it's over and done with. For others, it may be, I don't mind the project, but I want to figure out a way to make the building smaller. It may be, for some members, it's just about 64, and that number's too big. So Grist Mill went through this exact process.
We were just told by him on the record that
All right,
that's
right.
his number.
Agreed. So hopefully, by the end of this session, the chair and the board gets to some straw poll. The developer is never looking to waste your time or their time.
We're not looking to waste his.
Exactly, exactly. So the point of this process is where a developer, a proponent, can come in to the planning board without spending a lot of time
I
and
think
money.
we all know that.
Yeah.
We know the process.
Yep.
Evan, can I have one last question for you? On the abutting zone is RB per the GIS.
Mm-hmm.
What's the setback? I know it's 10, as Katie mentioned, the side setback is 10 feet. Is that legitimately?
Within the overlay, so within this property, the planning board can bring it down to 10 feet.
Really? Okay.
Again, it doesn't mean it has to go down to 10 feet.
What is it
You
now?
just
What is
came
it
up.
between the two zones from CV to RV, budding a residential, single-family neighborhood? What is that?
So as you know
It's
from
by
the.
right setback.
As you know from the footnote 4.
Yeah.
With the Route 40, I believe it would be increased to, let me just, so, let's see, we're in CV.
I don't even have
So
CV.
RB side yard is 25. Then you have to add the CV setback. let's see what the underlying, that's what you're asking me, right? What's the
I'm just asking
underlying?
how big, how far can that building actually approach that
Under
property
the
line?
overlay, it can be as close as 10 feet.
Yep,
So that would be a minimum 35 feet separation
right.
from structure to
So
structure.
it's 25 feet on the RB side.
Right, right. Under the underlying center village, side yard setback is 10 with a footnote of 1, which says may be partially or completely reduced by special permit from the planning board. So even the underlying center village has a 10-foot setback with flexibility.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mike?
Well, there's a lot to like about it, but I would have to agree with what several people have said, that it seems like an awful lot of building, particularly because this is the transition point from Center Village to a bunch of residential up along 27. And I suspect that if something quite this large goes in, the creep will continue. Other than that, I mean, I like the underground parking. I like the basic look of it. I mean, you could have other looks, but that's not a bad one. But I think it's just too large.
Henry?
Oh, I get to talk
Oh, you already went once.
Wow,
Tim? You threw me out of order here.
Like the rest of them, I like the building. If it was somewhere else, I think it would be great. I just can't get over the size of it. I'm just looking at when you turn that corner onto 27, it's not a country road anymore. It's a huge building right on you. The other issue I have is, where would you park any emergency vehicles coming in?
Well, the driveway's wide enough to do that.
Oh, it's good, 2 cars on the
Right in
drive,
here, and you
2
can go right
lanes.
over the grass
Yeah.
if you needed to, and up for fire vehicles.
And, I mean, like I said, I think it's a great building. It looks a little bit too big for that lot for me.
Donald?
Did you have something?
No, we'll go around
Go
first,
ahead.
and we'll come back to you then.
Okay,
Yeah.
so conceptually, absolutely, I like this building. I think it does fit into the center, and there's a couple of reasons why. The connectivity that this building offers and this project offers is not just towards Grist Mill and up towards Santander. It's over to Summer Street, which is an interest for Center Village to rope in Summer Street, because there's a lot happening on Summer Street that we miss in the center, and there's a lot of retail that's being provided, which will allow you that walkability connectivity to go over to the Summer Street. And I think that right there is very appealing.
How do you walk over from there?
There's a couple different ways. So they're proposing a crosswalk across 27, which goes into Bartlett Park. From Bartlett Park, there
Across
is
the park.
another crosswalk over to the library, which is a great asset for Chelmsford. And then from the library, you skip
Across the
over
street.
to the town center, and then you can get to Summer Street. I mean, so connectivity and walkability is definitely present. I hear what you're all saying, and absolutely, you look at this picture and you're seeing the building, it's a mighty footprint. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like there's much room here, or flexibility to design something a little more in scale to the not only the lot, but also the surrounding area. I think Mikey made an interesting point, and when you talked about the family that butts it on the left-hand side as we look at the picture here. And possibly, I know when you came before Center Village, you had the driveway on the other side.
We did.
If it was flipped back around as you exit, it would actually also provide a little relief from the crosswalk there and give the cars coming down a little more you can visually see the cars exiting the property. Conceptually, I like it. I think at some point, maybe if we want to move forward, maybe hearing from the Center Village Master Plan Committee might be a good course of action.
Hank, you got anything?
Yeah, I think it's a good location, and it's a nice-looking building. I like the idea, like Donald said, you can walk to the center, you can go to the restaurants. It's a nice location for that. But I do agree the size and the scope's a little bit much. 3 stories wouldn't be bad in my mind with the same footprint, but 4 stories with all those units, it just seems like a little bit too much, but.
Save me
Do
for
you,
last.
do you have a price range on these units?
We're looking at what Gristmill is doing now. They have larger units, so we think we'd start in the low 4s and see what happened.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, reasonable.
Yeah.
Sounds right. I'm gonna agree with what everybody else has been saying about the size of the unit. I think 64 units, I know we don't wanna dwell on the units because you're talking 2-bedroom units, pretty much,
Mostly.
So,
We're still looking at that. That's something that is
I think
being looked at.
I think doubling what is allowed there is like way overkill. And it's gonna make us down the road say, well, you did it for them, why can't you do it for us? The underground parking, I like that a lot. Not that it matters to this board at all, but concerns on that about how you're gonna keep the water from Beaver Brook from penetrating into your underground parking. I'll try to figure that one out.
Well, it's already got a basement in it, the building is there.
Yeah, but it's only half a basement.
But you gotta put it at height.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like a split level. It's only 4 feet underground, but you'd have to do that, but figuring out your elevations and stuff. But that's beside the point. But as far as again, the size of it is just. I like the look of it. I like the concept of it. I don't like the location of it. I don't like the size of it. And that's where I'm at. Nan, did you have another?
Yeah, I had something that Mike had said, just tweaked a thought. I do like the looks of the plan, the proposal that's put forward. My concern is that this is the kind of construction, in terms of the height and such, that we struggled to zone into 129 in terms of the magnitude of the building. At 129, we only permitted it right along the highway as a new development area that was away from any residential, away from our neighborhoods. To plunk it into the middle of our historic town center, to me, sounds absolutely outrageous. The other thing is that in the 129 area, we've had some multifamily that we considered high density. And again, we struggled with evaluating and approving housing at that density. And we're talking about 2.5 times higher than what we struggled with.
Right.
So I can't support this as a stretch of planning board prerogative in terms of dramatically extending every requirement that was planned into the Center Village overlay. I understand the advantages of getting more apartment housing into Chelmsford, and we have a drastic need to do that.
Right.
We have a huge need to do that.
But not
There
all in
is a
one
demand,
place.
but not all in one place on a 1.3 acre lot, and not in a building that has a height and bulk that we would have to consider long and hard directly along the highway on 129.
Well, with that being said, what do you think the will of the board will be with this? You want to?
Straw poll, conceptually, doing something on the site, absolutely.
Yeah. Doing that.
Doing this type of density, I would say probably wouldn't work for us. I'm sorry if it doesn't work for you. But, would love to visit this thing. I mean, but I think that this is my opinion. We gotta do a straw poll.
Why don't we do a quick straw poll and How many people on the board are in favor of the 64 units?
Well,
Kind of an easy.
yeah, let me comment first that I'm less concerned with units than I am with height and size.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Which
Yeah.
basically rolls into the same thing, that's the same.
Yeah, they, one works out to be
One
like
fits
the
the
other.
other.
I suppose it could all be 700 square foot mini apartments.
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah,
I think the board has done a very good job articulating
Yeah.
your concerns and your preferences. Maybe ask the developer, the proponent, if what they've heard gives them enough to
Yeah.
warrant going back over the next couple of weeks and revisiting it and maybe coming back to the planning board.
that's
That's
a
something
very
that
good
you guys
plan.
would
And, you know,
entertain to go back and go back to the drawing board and come back with something that,
Well, out of respect for all you members, we will do that. I'm not optimistic.
yeah,
You know, we thought we were sharing in a vision here for the overlay district for downtown, and we wanted to make an impact, and we spent some money doing geotechnical work, perimeter surveys, et cetera, to get to the point that we could present something that we thought had some value, you know? So I guess I need some more concrete feedback, I guess. I don't like 64. Do you like 64 one-bedrooms? Do you like, I mean, what is the size of the building that bothers you? How much?
the four
The height.
stories is probably the biggie. If you went down to 2 stories, I think everybody'd be happy with it.
3, you know, I don't know, we could even
So
talk about that.
if you
Well,
dropped
two-
it to 2-story with 1 bedrooms,
Let me just be clear, 2 stories isn't gonna happen.
What
okay?
happened, you have these 2 legs coming out. What happens if that was stepped? So therefore, all the height's not up on the front.
I think
step it
given what you're going to see I don't think stepping it's going to change the silhouette terribly much.
so you're trying to keep all buildings below the tree height? Is that what you're trying to do?
I won't say necessarily below the tree height, but trying to keep it from being something that is a massive presence. Now, we've got Cushing as well, but that's farther back from everything by quite
And
a
it's
substantial
below.
margin,
And it's below.
and in some ways lower. I mean, this is a great concept in almost every single respect here, I would have to say, but
Well, could
It's
I ask
awfully
this
large.
question? Because right now, we're not doing anything, so
Right.
we would like to do something. We spend a
Yeah.
lot of time and money on it. What is, 2 floors is, we just can't do it,
Right,
just
I
be
can
honest with you.
understand
Is 3 floors acceptable with the penthouse on top of the 3rd floor?
and you're back up to 4 floors.
Yeah.
Well, we're not 4 floors, it's only 4 floors for a small portion of the building. You don't see it from the front of the building at all. I did the same thing again. So-
Technical support.
Yeah.
So just, Lyle, the tech person, just to remind the board, because so you have full context, been 2 years in the making. This is a real-world developer in front of you.
I understand, and we got real-world
So,
situations.
so, listen, what I'm trying to say to the board is, you don't get many opportunities. So the developer is now trying to figure out a way in which he can justify going back to the drawing board with his value added, and then come back to the board. He's trying to figure out a way to work with you.
let's assume they do.
So again, the
Right, I
board.
think
the-
they're
the-
all
the
saying
board-
that.
So are you comfortable with 3 floors?
If I still have the penthouse floor, I think, I'm really not, my team, we're gonna crunch the numbers. I'm telling you, I'm not a dishonest guy, I don't wanna waste your time, I don't wanna waste a couple of years of my life if this is not gonna work. But I certainly can't do 2 floors, okay? And I'm
What-
hearing from you guys, no 4 floors. So I'm saying that maybe I go back and look to see 3 floors, and maybe I call up Evan and say I can't make it work, or maybe let me have another shot.
Same footprint?
Well, not exactly, maybe.
No, that's fair enough, fair enough.
I mean, we like the design. So part of the
Too
reason
close.
we got so many units and X amount of height is because we put all the parking underneath, which we thought was a key feature for the attraction. Rather than have, if you did 30 units and you had a parking lot out there, then you got garden-style apartment. That doesn't add anything to Center Village. It doesn't make it neat and someplace you want to live. the people want to sell their houses in Chelmsford to go, but this place would. I really think it would.
How many square feet are the units?
The one bedrooms are around 800, and the two bedrooms around 1,100 to 1,250, depending in there. We actually went up on the size of those because Gristmill actually had very large units. They had 1,400 feet units. The market in general is usually around 1,100 to 1,200 feet for a two bedroom. So, part of the thing we would do in going back, if we have an axiom we can kick off on, would be to look at more one bedrooms, no three bedrooms, one bedrooms versus two bedrooms, and maybe the unit count is not substantially different, but less, and we reduce the floor. But I can't tell you that we can achieve that we need some thought to go into that, you know what I mean?
Come back.
All right.
I'm not necessarily opposed to the
Yeah.
3 floors.
No, I'm not necessarily either.
Because if you're opposed to 3 floors too, then let's just call it a day, and it was nice meeting all of you, and hopefully there'll be something else we could do in town. But if you say, okay, 3 floors with the penthouse, I'll go back and look at it with my team.
I'm good with 3 floors in the penthouse.
But are you talking 3 floors in that footprint?
Well, I told you the footprint will probably change a little bit, because I think what we're gonna look at is the height in the mixture of 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms. Evan's been pushing us towards the 1 bedrooms from what he sees in sales at the gristmill. There's been a lot of demand for the 1 bedrooms over there.
I think you just got to take into consideration also with the other comments that we had regarding the neighbors, regarding the how close you are to the street.
Yeah, I think
So
we're
I think
gonna-
if you go back and look at all that, and you can come back with another plan, that's fine.
Okay, I'd like to do that, but I would like to have a straw vote to say 3 floors is, I'm not wasting my time going back and look at a design with 3 floors, and probably doing the following. Just let me give you off the top of my head. Flipping it again, the entrance over on that side, I heard that, okay? 3 floors, so now the parking will be down below. We'll have more parking than we had before. And then we'll look at the unit mix between the 2 bedrooms and the 1 bedroom, and that'll allow us to shrink the building, if you will.
Right.
Okay, not just chop off a wing, but maybe shrink it all around.
I think that'd probably be a smart thing to do, and I'm not sure 100%. I could probably ask Hank, you might know, the fire department. Don't they typically want 3 points of access around a building?
Yeah.
So you got one and a half.
Well,
I can see the 2 ends and around the back.
Well, no, you can't drive a fire
You
truck
don't
around
even have
that
a
end.
spot where you can
They can
put a
sit right
truck
out front,
anyways.
though.
You'll be on the
That's what I mean, so
Yeah, you
that's,
get nothing there.
We haven't met the fire district yet, but
right.
there's
Let me get to your
access
drawing.
here. Nope, any of the drawings is fine.
yeah.
There's access here. Fire truck can actually, the ladder truck can make this loop, and if we need to, now that we're flipping it, if we need to do some additional
Right.
access here, we can certainly do that, but.
And I'm not saying I know the answer to that, I'm
Yeah,
just
but we
throwing
could
that out there.
absolutely
Yeah.
probably do the fire prevention before we
Right.
came back with a plan for
Yeah.
site plan review.
Right.
Absolutely,
Yeah, that's
we
something to
always
look
do.
So straw vote of 3 or smaller, or
Is it 3 plus the penthouse?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that, and then he just
3
said
plus the
3.
penthouse,
3
right?
plus a penthouse.
3 plus the penthouse. That's what he said.
Nan, yea or nay, 3 plus the penthouse?
Basically chop
Look at
one.
what you can do to hide that penthouse behind something that looks like a roof.
Mike, yea or nay, 3 in the penthouse?
Just 3, no
I know you
penthouse.
can.
Okay, Mike, 3 of the
I'll consider it. It's getting closer.
Ronald?
Yeah, so, again, the penthouse, it's basically a deck. We're not talking,
No, it's another story.
Yeah, it's an habitable,
So it's 4 stories.
Not an elevator or a stairwell.
yeah.
Can we see a photo of
Nice
that?
concept.
It's gorgeous.
He doesn't have one yet. We're just gonna.
Beautiful concept.
May I
I'd love to
suggest,
live there.
may I suggest that if you could,
We have pre-sales. So, you see in here, there's a spiral staircase, so that goes down to the floor below it.
How,
I think
how
what-
would
I
the
think what I'm
building
hearing-
inspector, how would the building inspector look at that? As a 3-story building or a 4-story building?
I have no
it's,
idea.
it's gonna be a 4-story building, but
Be a
how
four-story
about this? How about what I'm hearing from the board is you're intrigued, but you wanna see what it looks like.
you
So
have an
if you're
elevation?
able to bring pictures, inspirational pictures,
Sketches.
a sketch, there, it sounds like the board is concerned about is the penthouse is a 4th floor. It's on a full 4th floor and it's set in the back of the building. they appear to be concerned about the massing, the visibility. What is it going to look like? So if you can provide any inspiration so they can get a feel for what it's going to look like, how high, that type of thing.
Can I offer a thought? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you can't really, it's not really.
Well,
When
the
you,
reason we have it is,
Yeah.
I don't know if we should spend a lot more money or not. and that's-
yeah, but I could make a better decision if I could have an elevation drawing and see it from the side.
Yeah, what I'd kind of like to see, and I think it may be one of the simpler things we're asking for, you had a picture there from the park looking toward the front of the building. A nice picture. It was a conceptual piece. Yeah, that guy. I'd like to put that side by side against the newer proposal and see what it looked like. That's where
That's where you're gonna see it from.
that's where I'm going to see the kinds of things that have got me thinking. And I might also say, now that I look at it, looking at those two wings coming toward me, just a little terracing there actually makes some significant difference in the skyline silhouette, and that's only a couple of units. So that might be worth also looking at. But, I don't want to make it grandly complex for you. I don't want to make you spend a whole bunch of money to convince us old codgers.
Where were we on the straw poll? I hadn't.
I think you get kind of a good indication
Well-
what we want now.
Well,
Straw poll wise, I think we're saying, we'll entertain the 3-story.
With the penthouse.
Yeah.
Or another way of saying it is, they want you to convince them. They need some more information.
So this is what I'm saying, so what I'm saying, okay, 3 stories with the penthouse, we'll shrink the building, we'll look at the unit mix, we'll flip the building in terms of the entrance, so it's not such, when people come around the corner, they'll go on the other side. Those are the components that I got out of this. so
Yeah, I
far.
think it's fair.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair? Can I comment?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm concerned about how the building presents in terms of the magnitude of it. But I'm also concerned that people in town are going to look at it as an invasion of city into their small town. So this sits right on the edge of Center Village, which is a historic district. It's certified as a historic district. On the other side of it is all historically significant housing and historically significant architecture. So what you're plopping in the middle of this just looks like city.
Well,
And that's what people are going to see.
We made a concerted effort not to make it look urban, but to make it look villagey. And when you get a design like this, and you're basically looking for this amount of units, when you do underground parking, you're not building a gambrel roof. You're building a more contemporary looking building, but it's still villagey looking. I see this in all cities and towns in Massachusetts, this type of architecture, and it fits in beautifully.
Can you go back on the
Not this
map
size.
and show where this is actually in the center village? Because conceptually, this looks like a big building, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, looking from Bartlett Park, it is, but looking at it that way, it's not a.
Just show me a picture of, from 19 Acton Road, that single-family home, looking up at this thing.
No, not saying revised. When you revise.
Oh, maybe when he
Yeah,
revises.
if you could show us that, that's a good view to see, because
Yeah.
they're the ones that are gonna be living with it every day.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I got to admit, the thing that's there now is pretty ugly.
it's pretty ugly.
I don't think we should be zoning for neglect either, but.
Zoning for
Maybe
ugliness?
when you come
Yeah.
back, you can conceptually show us
Touche.
what it looks like sitting in the center, as opposed to from Bartlett Park and here's your building. I
Yeah.
mean, conceptually, you get a
They could
better
shrink
idea.
The architecture, Nan, is, like, if you can agree on everything else you've talked about tonight, and then you're just massaging and tweaking the architecture, I don't get the impression that the developer's 100% committed to brick.
I understand
but,
that,
you know.
Evan, and I'm not saying that it should be one architecture or another. I'm simply providing the feedback that says, this is what people in town are going to care about, okay? And that's what you need to be sensitive to as you go forward with a proposal, is we're gonna have a whole lot of people at the, I mean, if we approve it for use, for applicability to VCOD, and you come in with a plan, we are going to have a mass of public involvement in this review. And they are going to care about how does it present and how does it change the look and feel of their town.
I mean,
Now, with that said, though, we were comfortable with 3 and the penthouse.
No, we
is
wanna-
setback
we wanna
and
have a
everything
look
that
at it.
we
Yeah.
talked about.
Well, I leave you with one thought. I got beat up here a little bit, but, I mean, that's what you got now,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it ain't glorious.
Mr. Chairman, or anything else?
Well, I think if you got enough information to go back and
Yeah, we'll give it a
kind
go.
of give it a go and come back and,
We'll let you know.
and we'll take a,
We hear everything.
take another peek at it and see if you can make it work. If you can, good. You know, it's all about dollars and cents. It's, you gotta be the one that convinces the bank at one point in time.
Yeah, you've got to get financing
Right.
on it.
Can I ask a question? Do you own the lot now?
Do this with you, we appreciate your feedback, I just don't know if it's achieved or
Okay.
not. And if we can't do it, please don't take offense, it's just,
Yeah.
it's money, it's economics.
Understood.
Yeah.
And we'll come back and see you again.
Mike, he has a a conditional PNS on it.
You do, I was wondering if you you own the lot now.
Yeah.
You do.
No, I don't.
No.
You have a
PNS
conditional
on
No.
These things come in.
Well, that only happens on Route 40,
Then they
doesn't happen
die.
anywhere
No, I'm
else.
just asking.
Right.
This could fit perfectly at another lot. This could fit perfectly at another
Well,
lot.
it could, but
It
We're
could.
looking right at the GIS.
And now,
If
and
they
now
wanted
we're,
to go
well,
and go approach
that's
another
why,
company.
that's why the first slide mentioned the third leg of the stool is Santander.
Right.
I just didn't know if he owned it like other ones.
No one does that.
No.
Well,
No one
no one
does
does.
that.
But,
it's
but
too much money.
there's perfect lots right around there that if someone might want to
Well,
go
those
buy,
aren't-
that might fit.
They're not for sale.
It may. My point to you is, and the board, is that you will be dealing with something similar for the Santander.
there might,
Which is the
there might be a
odd
property
I don't
over
know
on
which one that is.
129 where
Odd fellows,
where
huh?
that building that he's proposing would fit awesome into that.
Awesomely.
Agreed, but we're also trying to have a strategy for Center Village. Right? People in town
You
want
gotta-
the center to be vibrant, they want boutique retail, right, they want walkability. You gotta have boots on the ground. So I think we've made progress tonight. I think the board provided good feedback.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you for coming.
Take a 5-minute?
Yeah, take a 5-minute break.
Brian,
So,
we're ready.
I mean, that's really.
Want to just
We're
open
done.
the legal ad, read the legal ad, open the hearing?
Where's the legal ad at? You got it over there?
That's Mike's job.
They don't want to be at Cambridge, they don't want to be in
Okay.
Somerville,
Right.
you know?
Reminds me a little bit, the vibe kind of reminds me.
A whole bunch of stuff. You wanna waive reading all the notes?
All right.
What is it?
Let me,
Just all
let
typical.
me talk to you tomorrow.
Any,
All right.
why don't you give us a motion to
So if there are any
waive the,
objections, we should look them through on this.
Well, I should read the legal notice.
read the legal. While you're reading that, look through that, Mike, and see
All
if
right.
there's any.
We should be reading.
No, I'll get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Glenn.
You want to open it up, start it up, and I'll get to work.
Yep, here we go. We're back in operation here.
Okay, this is pertaining to 278 to 282 Mill Road, and let me do the readings. Legal notice, the Chelmsford Planning Board will conduct a public hearing on Wednesday, July 24th, 2019, at 7:30 PM at the Town Offices, 50 Billerica Road, Room 204, to consider the application of Rainbow Builders Corp. for property located at 278 to 282 Mill Road for the construction of a 5,400 gross square foot, single-story, multi-tenanted commercial building. Tenants include a 3,000 square foot restaurant with 100 seats and 2 retail tenant spaces and associated site improvements. The site is located in the IA zoning district and is shown as parcel IDs, map 97, block 328, lot 7 and 8, consisting of approximately 1 acre. The applicant requests approval under Article 24, Business Amenities Overlay District, and Article 21, Community Enhancement and Investment Overlay District, CEIOD, and associated special permits per sections 195, 114A and B, side and rear dimension setbacks, and 195, 115C, location of parking between the front elevation of the building and the street, and any other permit relief as may be required under the Chelmsford zoning bylaw to allow the proposed use project. A copy of the proposal is available in the Community Development Department in room LL01 of the town offices, 50 Billerica Road, Chelmsford, Mass. 01824, and may be viewed Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. All interested parties are invited to comment in writing or may present any relevant information for consideration at a public hearing on July 24th, 2019, per order Glenn Cole, Chairman, Chelmsford Planning Board.
Perfect.
Okay, now we have from the sewer division.
That's police, I think.
That's all, what have we got here? Oh, police. Police, see attached letter. Re 278, 282 Mill Road, Rainbow Builders Corp., special permit for the construction of a 5,400 square foot, single-story, multi-tenanted commercial building. Tenants include a 3,000 square foot restaurant with 100 seats and 2 retail tenanted spaces and associated site improvements. Dear Chelmsford Planning Board, the Division of Special Services has reviewed the site plan for 278 to 282 Mill Road. After carefully reviewing the plans, there are 2 issues of concern. The first issue is the inadequate number of handicap parking spaces. In the plan, there are 59 parking spaces and only 2 handicap spaces. Based on the town of Chelmsford bylaws, if there are more than 40 parking spaces but not more than 100 parking spaces, 3 handicap parking spaces are required. I brought this issue to the attention of Brian Goudreau from Hancock Associates, and they will be addressing the issue. The second issue is the need for a stop sign at the exit of the development onto Mill Road. This stop sign is necessary due to the traffic volume and speeds on Mill Road. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Sincerely, Lieutenant Colin C. Spence, Special Services. From Health, no concerns. Historic Commission. Dear Planning Board members, the Historic Commission has looked at the proposed plans for this location, and we do have several concerns. The exterior of this
That's a
proposed...
different project.
Oh, whoops, how did that get in there? You're right, it is a different project. That's,
For
That's the last
a different time.
yeah, it was the last one. Okay, back to Mill Road. From Evan Belansky, wonder who he is.
I have reviewed the project and submit the following for consideration. Based upon the limited scope and scale and constraints of the site, the requested waivers appear to be reasonable and justified. Similar to the potential restaurant approved at 2129 Drum Hill, an outdoor eating area should be provided, and as such, a minimum of 2 approved parking spaces could be considered for this purpose in lieu of another option. All exposed retaining walls shall not be unfinished concrete. All snow will likely need to be removed from the site. The proposed dead-end parking aisle should be improved by either enlarging the turnaround and/or mark one of the end spaces as no parking. Dumpster area should be on a pad and screened appropriately. The landscape plan is not prepared and stamped by a licensed landscape architect. Doing so should provide enhancements related to quality and quantity of landscape materials. A 53G contribution in the amount of $5,900 shall be provided. Not able to identify location of freestanding lights in any wall packs, we'll need to know that. As a pitch roof is proposed, all equipment should be located within the roof and/or screened appropriately. As the restaurant is in close proximity to residences, advanced odor control mechanisms should be considered. No signage has been proposed as part of this application. Consideration should be given to locating any freestanding sign as part of this application, and such sign should be monument in style. A bike rack should be incorporated that is compliant with the BPAC standards. Next one up, fire. I bet we waive it because it's an absolute standard fire one.
Council Police, you already did that.
Already did them. And what is this? Public Works.
It's a standard one, too.
Oh, from Christina. Dear members, this office has reviewed the site plan by Hancock Associates consisting of 8 sheets dated July 2nd, 2019, and a supplemental data report dated July 2nd, 2019. As a result of this review, this office has the following comments. 1, this department shall be notified when work on site is to commence in order to arrange for inspections. 2, any revision to the drainage system shall be submitted and approved by this office. 3, the stormwater operation and maintenance plan shall be followed as described in the report. Copies of any inspections or other reports done in accordance with a plan shall be forwarded to the engineering office. 4, a site as-built shall be provided upon completion of the work on site, as-built to include a letter from the engineer stating that all stormwater devices have been built to satisfy Mass stormwater standards, provide all supporting documents and calculations. The as-built shall be from a ground survey and submitted in AutoCAD and paper form. 5, confirmatory testing shall be provided in the area of infiltration per stormwater management guidelines. Testing shall be witnessed by the Chelmsford DPW Engineering Division. All unsuitable material, if any, discovered in the excavation for the infiltration system shall be removed and disposed of in accordance with state and local regulations. 6, a contribution to the 53G account for the additional parking spaces shall be considered. 7, this project requires an NPDES construction general permit. A final copy of the stormwater pollution prevention plan must be submitted to the town as well as filed with the EPA prior to the beginning any site work. 8, the proposed sewer works will require permitting and applicable fees from the DPW sewer division for connection to the municipal sewer system. 9, a road opening permit is required from the Chelmsford DPW Highway Division for work within the Mill Road right-of-way. Mill Road will be paved this year, and a 5-year no-cut moratorium will be placed on the new pavement. The applicant is aware of this condition. 10, trench permits shall be filed as necessary per 520 CMR 14, Chapter 82A. 11, the design engineer is in the process of completing design and drafting revisions to the plans according to the recommendations of this office. If you have any questions, please contact this office, 978-250-5228. Sincerely, Christina Papadopoulos, Town Engineer.
Is that all of them?
Yep.
That's it.
And this one, well, I guess that one snuck in.
You can start whenever you're ready, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. So good evening, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board. So to give you a little background on this, we have been, this project has been in the works for a while. If you recall last fall, this parcel went to town meeting to get pulled into the overlay district, and that was successful, which is why we're here before you today. Back in the spring, we had filed our preliminary CEIOD plan, BAOD plan, generally speaking with what you see before you today. And since then, we've revisited a number of different aspects of this specific development to make sure that we're proposing what is in, in harmony with this parcel. So the project is a 5,900 square foot mixed-use commercial building. Right now it's proposed 3,000 of that to be restaurant, the rest of it to be retail. 59 spots are proposed as a part of this. And generally speaking, topography on the site is sloping down from Mill Road up to the rear property line by about 20 feet. So if you recall the discussions of why the layout looks like this, it's because we had to tier the site in two different tiers to be able to create a fill near Mill Road and to create a cut towards the rear of the building where we propose retaining walls. So essentially we're trying to get up to an appropriate elevation to dig the building into the hill. Colleen, could you put the elevation on?
Yep.
What we've done since then is fully preliminarily developed architecture for the building, and we've submitted various renderings showing the front elevation and also a streetscape so that you could get a feel of what the site's going to look like. So this is a shot from across Mill Road into the site, and you can see kind of the low-rise retaining wall and then the driveway sloping up to an upper tier where there's parking at the building, and then in the background is the building. There's also a couple of other renderings that give you a close-up on the building showing really the architecture. It's a large sidewalk all the way around with an overhang and recessed storefront doors, and then obviously you have the hip gable roofs, and then kind of a tower element at the top. So here again you can kind of see that upper tiered parking level and the building itself. So to pivot back to the site plan, we've fully engineered stormwater management and all utilities into the site. Right now, there's a utility pole in front of the property that will go to underground and a transformer on site. Stormwater management will be handled underground in infiltration systems, which are fully stormwater management compliance. As the DPW letter said, there is going to be a moratorium on Mill Road at some point this year because of repaving activities. And we had a department head meeting last week to really hash out any other outstanding issues. And Evan's letter did a good job summarizing those. But to key in on the moratorium, we took a look at how water would enter the site and had a discussion with Central Water. There's actually a stub that's at the rear property line that was done as a part of the adjacent development, and that is where it was requested for us to access water for this project. So that means we don't have to go out into Mill Road should the timing not correspond. We looked at gas, and gas is just to the north of the curb line of Mill Road, so we don't actually have to go into the street for gas. That was a big concern of ours. So with the utility pole and Comcast, Verizon, National Grid being aerial, we can obviously deal with that on our site, which leaves sewer. So sewer is kind of, it's going to come down to a timing thing where if this project moves forward to approvals, Lou is committed to putting that sewer stub in immediately. So as soon as the paving schedule has been dictated, as soon as the project's approved, should this board see fit to do that, Lou will immediately get that done so as not to impact the new pavement in the road. There was a question about lighting. Right now, we're not proposing lighting, correct? We need to design it. wall packs or yeah, or light fixtures. So we're not quite at the point, but we do understand the desire of, the Dark Skies Initiative. We're obviously going to propose and we welcome it as a condition of full cutoff lights of the lower intensity, kind of more of that yellow light rather than the harsh bright white. And we could certainly pass those plans back through the town when they are prior to being installed, essentially. The other kind of life safety was with respect to the handicap space and turning around in the upper tiered parking lot. So the third handicap space is just not indicated on the plan, but if you look at the left-hand side of the building, there's already kind of a placeholder there. It's just not striped out. So we will have the proper amount of 3 handicap spaces. And a suggestion was made during the department head meeting that if the upper tiered parking lot was full of cars, that a vehicle would have to back up and then search for parking. So if they pulled in front of the building, discovered that there wasn't available spaces there, they would have to reverse maneuver a short distance to be able to look at the rest of the parking lot. And a suggestion was made to stripe out one of the end spaces to allow for that turnaround, for a vehicle to turn around and then go. Now that would bring us underneath the 59 required spaces for these proposed uses, but it's in the purview of this board to be able to waive that to 80% compliance. So if that's something that this board would like to see, we'd welcome that as a condition. Kind of with that said, I'm here, Lou's here, and we're happy to answer questions.
All right. So what do we run this around the board and see what we got for questions and comments? We'll start again at, what do you want to start, Mike?
No,
okay.
I'll start if you like.
All right, go ahead. Start with Mike
Okay.
this time.
All in all, looks pretty good. I think we're going to need the lighting plan to finish it up. This up.
Lighting, landscape,
And
sign,
landscape, we're going to need all of that stuff. I have every reason to believe that it will come out reasonably favorably, but we're going to need them before we can make a final decision. And that's pretty much my only commentary. It's actually, it's fascinating how in your rendering you make it look like this shrine on top of a mountain without showing any of the stuff behind it. But that's okay, I suppose. AutoCAD does those things, huh?
It does.
Yeah.
You want to give it a shot, Mike?
I'm fine.
Good?
I think it's a good project and no questions.
Nan?
Yeah, I second Mike on, we need to see the lighting plan. I do not want to be in a position approving a plan that requires the users of the property to walk that far through a parking lot that's not lit. I'm looking at the landscaping plan, and I have a couple concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I really like some of the materials you're using, particularly the syringa. I haven't seen that used much in our landscape plans, and it's a really gorgeous tree for this purpose. However, I am concerned about the honey locust because of the pods that it drops, and I think you're going to have a maintenance issue with it. It's not like acorns that damage cars, but nonetheless, I think you're going to have a maintenance issue with it. And I would like to see some landscaping materials that separate your parking lot from the adjacent property's pool. Because I think those folks are going to want some privacy at their pool from your parking. So please address that one.
Mm-hmm. So if I could, there's a very large elevation differential between those
How
two.
big's the elevation?
So there's a 16 to 20 foot retaining wall on the adjacent
never mind
side,
then.
and then an 8 to 11 on ours. So we're set very
In
low.
that case, do something to soften the look of the retaining wall. Gotcha. But yeah, that's fine in terms of the privacy issue.
All right, Henry?
I think he's got our list of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody generally has a problem with it.
No.
But we just need those few things tightened up, and, you know, definitely we want to see the signage, we want to see what it is, you know, definitely want to see the light poles. We just got to tighten things up, and you got to make sure that that water is captured coming off that hill, because it can be a waterfall.
Jim?
I think it looks good. I'm all set with it. No issues.
Donald?
Any issues with the parking? With the board?
I don't see any, other than
That one space.
that one
we can deal
space.
with
I
it.
think we can deal with
Go with
that.
that?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Perfect, no problem.
Okay?
I'd like to see the fire department swept plans and,
I have it, I just got it very late.
You did?
I'll send it to
Yep.
you.
and you get all the recommendations for the fire department,
They still need to verify.
Yeah.
But they need to verify it.
bring that too.
That's it?
Basically
Question?
tighten up the plan a
I
little
got-
bit and
I
bring it
got
to us.
Yeah,
One,
yeah, we're game.
one question for Christina. When is the paving gonna happen over there?
I don't have an exact month, but this season is what I was told.
This is like late in the season, or?
No, this season.
It's kind of a critical
We
thing,
don't
because
know.
if we drag this out for a meeting or two, they need to get their
Yeah,
stuff
they
in
need
the
to get their
ground.
whole-
If I may, at the interdepartmental review meeting that Donald attended on behalf of the planning board, the town manager gave his commitment to the proponent, and I'm relaying that to the planning board, that the town will work with the proponent.
Okay,
Good.
There will not be a situation where there
yeah, they're
is
not
a-
just gonna go in there and pave it one afternoon, and these guys are gonna be like,
What do we do now?
yeah,
We're aware that there's potential for construction, so
okay. And you
we know,
mentioned
yeah.
your water service is already in there. Is the service already in for the sprinklers too, or just a service for domestic?
No, there's an 8-inch
It's an 8-inch, all right. You're
in
good.
the back, so that's what we're gonna tap off of.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead, Nan.
Yeah, question for Christine. Since hydrology is not my topic, what catches the water at the bottom of that driveway?
They have proposed a trench drain,
Okay.
and only a small portion of the end of that driveway actually goes into the trench drain. They do have several, two catch basins, one on that side and one on the other, in the middle of the pavement area, that will capture the runoff, then direct it into a subsurface infiltration system.
Okay.
So for members who aren't familiar with a trench drain, there's one at 110 Grill on Chelmsford Street.
Yeah.
Long skinny grate,
Long
as
skinny
oppo-
grate.
long skinny grate as opposed to typical storm drain.
Yeah, I
So
think of
it
them as
expands the width of the driveway would be one big
Yeah,
drain.
all right.
Well, what's the thought on the board as far as giving an approval
Is this a public hearing?
contingent upon?
It's a public hearing. Do we have to ask for?
Oh, that's right, it's a public
Public?
hearing, right.
But
We got a public hearing. Does anybody from the public want to speak on this?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and planning board members. My name is Jeff Brown. I'm general counsel with Princeton Properties. I'm sure you're all aware. Our development is to the south of this, and so we come out, we abut on both the westerly side and southerly side. And so I've had an opportunity to speak with Brian at some length about our concerns, and I think a few of them have been enumerated by the members here. But generally, Princeton supports this project. We think it's a great amenity to our apartment community for our residents. And generally, we are in favor of it, and worked with Brian many times, and I think I'm optimistic we'll be able to resolve our issues. I have specified them, and again, many of these have been already brought up by the board. Visual screening of the new development to our apartment complex, specifically the pool area, as you had mentioned. Elimination of offensive odors from the proposed restaurant. Location of dumpsters and timing of trash pickup is concern to our residents that we're not going to hear BFI out there at 4 o'clock in the morning slamming dumpsters. Stormwater management seems to be under control, but again, just that will be properly reviewed as it always is in projects before the town. That there would be markings for designated parking. We do have some parking off to the left for school age school drop-offs. We just, like other butters, don't want to see people parking in our parking lot, and just an understanding of the business hours of operation. And again, I've reviewed these with Brian. He is committed to work with us and with his developer to address these issues, and I'm confident we can address all of that. I've put together a letter just outlining our concerns for the board.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for us, for Princeton?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, once if you give that to Colleen and we'll get it into the file, maybe you could shoot that around so we can see it. Thanks.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Good evening. Brian Latina, 15 Jesse Road,
16.
Chelmsford, and I'm a town meeting rep, precinct 4, which is part of this area. First concern I have was handicap parking. We do a terrible job in our town to take care of our handicapped residents. Across the street from the Center Village District, I counted 5 different serious hazards for handicap. This evening when I came in, we were talking about 3 parking spaces in this location. When I came in, I was greeted with fist-sized rocks in the handicap ramp at the back of this building. So my concern on this property is the pitch of the driveway, whether there's sidewalks that are handicap accessible. What kind of parking are we doing for handicapped? Will we have hash marks that are opposite each other? When you have a van pull in, what we're proposing here is 59 cars coming in and out of there, up to that number, I guess, with the parking spaces. So are those 3 handicap spaces properly hash marked so that when you drive a van into it, the lift comes down, it covers 4 feet, which is typically, in our town, the entire hash mark. If there's another car parked next to it, you can't get out, or worse, you can't get in. So you want to put the hash marks together and then enforce people parking on the hash mark, because you can't park on a hash mark. You can't get in, you can't get out, and it blocks it. With only 3 spaces, I have a serious concern there. I couldn't tell the pitch. Princeton Properties is illegal. It violates the American with Disability Act on their driveway going up. The Zoning Board of Appeals went ahead and passed it anyway and got a variance from the state to violate the American with Disability Act, which is a federal act.
We're supposed to be sticking with this
It's
project.
next door, and it's part of my, part of my, right. So the driveway that comes out of there has a kiosk at the bottom with 1 handicap space. Arguably, the kiosk could be hit by somebody sliding down that hill. I'm concerned here because this is much more active than a residential area. Adjacent to this property is another exit to the analog properties. Those 2 driveways are going to almost touch each other. That's going to be a very serious traffic risk. I would like the board to understand exactly what the pitch of that is, how many cars are going out of there, and recognize that right next door, outside of this picture, is another driveway. And the reason I brought that up is because my son, in his handicap van, hit a car coming out of Elizabeth Drive, which is the next little driveway over. So immediately you have Elizabeth Drive, a parking exit, this new parking exit here, all adjacent to each other. And my experience was, my son got hit in a 15 passenger van in that same road, at that same area, because of the circle here. Would like to know what you're doing about that. I'm amazed to hear that we're paving this road, because it was just repainted Sunday night, as was Mill Road out this way on 129 by Department of Transportation on a torn up road. We're disconnected here, folks. If we're putting this kind of handicap access trip waiting to happen in Town Hall, I'm concerned about what we're doing here on these maps. I'd like to know on that driveway what the handicap spaces are, and I will make a federal case out of it if it is not proper and meeting the American with Disability Act. Thank you.
Okay, Brian, you want to throw an answer to that as far as the handicap spots go? And can you put them back to back? So, that's a striping thing. That's simple.
That's exactly it. So if you look at the ADA Act, or ADA in general, basically a van space is 8 feet wide with an 8-foot striped out area. These spaces are fully conforming to Chelmsford, so it's 9, 9, and 9. So we have 2 ADA spaces in a common striped out area that all exceed these federal regulations. The last space that we're sort of showing, but will be on the revised plan, is a standard space with a 5-foot striped out area next to it, so it fully conforms. With respect to grades, all of those areas need to be less than 2% in any direction. We've specifically graded it that way. Tip downs can be no more than 6 inches. Side tip downs can be no more than 1 in 12 as a slope. And then again, you have to have those level landings less than 2 feet. Sidewalks in front of buildings are less than 2% in any direction. We've taken a look at all of these things and accommodated them. With respect to the driveway, the sidewalk directly abuts the driveway. The driveway does not exceed 5%. 5% is a critical slope for a handrail, and we meet that as well. So we've taken all these provisions into account when we designed the site.
You're pretty confident that you're compliant? Okay. Anybody else from the public that wants to speak?
If I could, I appreciate that a lot. I was happy to hear. If I could, the turnaround space was intriguing to me. If those handicap spaces were adjacent to that turnaround space, and if you did a hash mark there, you could cheat a little bit. It keeps people from parking their car there, and you might be able to use that as a handicap space so that you can hash mark the whole thing. Just
There you
an
go.
idea to put the handicap on that end.
Perfect.
Take that into consideration.
It's practical.
All right, anybody else? All right, hearing none.
Would you want to keep the public hearing open until they come back, I presume?
Yeah, we need to get
Yeah.
Continue the
Because we need
I-
to
I-
continue
I could-
the public hearing.
Continue?
And I could expedite a draft decision for the 14th.
Would you do a draft decision on it, and
Good.
we'll get you ready for your, for the next meeting, and
Continue to the 14th? That
Continue
work
to the
for your
14th.
team?
we get a motion for that from Mike, and second from Tim. All in favor? Aye. Very good. We'll see you on the 14th.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, what else we got here?
May I suggest, due to the late hour and the 3.5-hour meeting here, that we table new business, the zoning articles, and
I like that.
target those for the 14th?
Why don't we table what's left
I'd
to the...
like to distribute these
Distribute,
first.
definitely.
Yep,
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that's fine.
yep. That
So on the
sounds good.
14th, you have continuation of 278 Mill Road. If 9 Acton Road appears, that'll be on it, and then the zoning articles.
Okay.
Pretty manageable agenda.
Terrific.
This is the redrafted,
It's a
Yeah, no,
historical
we're going
thing.
to, I'm going to tell you about it, and you're going to look at it and talk and review it at the next meeting.
And just for zoning articles, at this point, I have a final draft of cluster open space, which I'll distribute prior to the 14th.
Okay,
I have a, the pre-existing non-conforming draft ready for the 14th. Route 40 will finalize for the 14th. That's 3.
yep.
Fourth one is
I have 2 here.
Nan's
Yes,
effort.
things,
So we've identified at least 4 zoning articles potentially for fall town meeting.
okay.
And the fifth one, which is low-hanging fruit, is whether the planning board wants to consider deleting the sign advisory committee from the sign bylaw. The zoning board finds little or no need for the sign advisory committee. More importantly, we've had difficulty getting 3 members on a consistent basis for the sign advisory. Just mull it over, give it some thought.
Okay.
Glenn?
Yes?
I'd also like to suggest another one, which is a modification of 195-113, residential uses under the COID, to delete the clause except in the IA zoning district.
Okay. Can you, work that into the stuff too?
I can certainly, as Naz said, that's a
I'll create a
very
map to go
easy
with it.
zoning, but it's policy-driven.
Right.
I strongly encourage the board to make sure you fully deliberate that and understand what it does and what it doesn't do.
Okay.
I'll supply
I think
some
you guys are
notes.
aware of the themes around town.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay, so the one I handed out,
I thought we were tabling these.
I'm just telling you about it so
okay.
you can go
All right,
review it. So, I thought it might help to know what it is, so you could go away and review it.
Or just go away.
Or just go away. Okay, so as most of you know, I have been working with the Historical Commission for, I don't know, it seems like my whole life at this point, to come up with a new article, since the previous one failed at town meeting, for historical preservation. So this draft represents what we have finally negotiated. The map that goes with it shows what it could potentially, and I say potentially, be applicable to. The potential is, does anybody want to invest the money to actually do it? So, so the pink, properties shown in pink, are the properties that would be affected by the new clause for three-family conversions from a historic structure. Those conversions require, as a condition of approval, that the property be put under historic preservation restrictions. It relocates, but it keeps the current two-family conversion of old properties. Those are shown in green. So those already exist in our zoning bylaws. This simply moves them. And what's shown in yellow are properties that have already been converted. So they already exist. So the yellow ones exist today. The green ones are acceptable under our current bylaws, and the pink ones would be added for three families under this new provision. The new bylaw also provides the ability to split properties with a historic preservation restriction, to basically split the land to allow for an extra lot. And again, you'd have to put the original house under historic preservation restrictions. So take a look. There's some stuff in there. I did add some clauses specifically for rear lots because they've been troublesome for this purpose, and specifically for the relocation of historic properties.
Can I make one comment on your map?
Yep.
If we could show where a couple of the roads are so somebody looks at this can actually make sense of it.
I could put some annotations in.
Yeah, I think you gotta
Or
look at,
even
you
the
look at a
highways.
landmark
I
and try to
think
figure
it's
out.
like
Yeah.
The highways.
Oh,
would
you
be
don't know
95.
intrinsically what all those are?
Well, at first we didn't.
It'll take you about, it'll take you about 10 minutes to figure it out.
I know. I'll be happy to.
Yeah, you can explain it.
Yeah, I have to do.
I got one other
overlay
thing.
tags, but
Yep.
that's
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Woo!
Point of order, I've been observing the proceedings tonight, and I have a point of order.
Okay.
Step to the podium.
Yes.
And I thought we already closed.
Name, rank, and serial number. I guess we're not quite close.
Yeah, we'll listen.
Well, it's a point of order, right? So my name's Scott Rummel, I live at 24 Lovett Lane. I would like to recommend to the board that you strike the letter from the EDC to the board that was recommended to be read into the record tonight, because one, it's inflammatory, and number two, it's misrepresenting the facts. For inflammatory, the gentleman from the ED said, quoted from the master plan, that he was reluctant to change what the subcommittee recommended. And I think that was inflammatory. The subcommittee specifically recommended, after thoughtful evaluation, and made a decision to leave the south side as it was. It wasn't a reluctance to change it. It was a deliberate decision. If you change the zoning on the south side, you're actually creating a zoning conflict. So that was one part of the inflammatory. The other is the zoning suggestions, it actually creates a zoning conflict. The second reason that was misrepresenting was the EDC reference, page 112, where you would maximize the commercial tax base, and the speaker tonight said, yes, economics was his primary focus, when in fact his focus was to not only consider economics, but also the benefit of the town. So he only decided to look at the maximizing the financial benefits. The misrepresented was in the quoting of the 2010 master plan. They changed it to say I'm paraphrasing the master plan. I'm not an English major, but I thought when you paraphrase something, you're not supposed to change the meaning of the paragraph that you're referencing and paraphrasing. He said, we want to take the residents' concerns into consideration in the conflict resolution. What the master plan said was, we want a resolution in a fashion that is amenable to the residents. So something that's amenable to the residents
I
is
can
not.
understand what you're saying, I can understand that it's inflammatory, but it's part of our record now, it's been read into the meeting.
It ain't going away.
It ain't going away. Just, it is what it is.
You can strike it.
We won't.
You can have all sorts of different opinions in this world. You know, you could tell us the sky's purple. We will listen to you, we'll put it in the record, but that's where it goes.
Okay. What about the misrepresentation? Of
we're not gonna even, we've come to our decision as far as we're not.
I agree. I'm not arguing about
no,
your decision.
I mean, this.
Nothing is gained by striking it.
Sure, I don't think the audience is a planning board. I would definitely encourage you to come back to EDC at the next meeting, and we would love to have you there.
Okay, I think it's an ethics violation if you allow it to stay in there when you know it's misrepresenting a quote.
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to.
Thank you. That was my point of order.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now.
Want to adjourn?
Second.
Bye.
Adjourn.
See ya.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right.